Chapter 1051. In the lower star domain, if the heavenly law captured the trajectory of spirit power, it would certainly mercilessly obliterate the heavenly law. Thus, how could this young crown prince disregard the heavenly law's punishment and use the power of fire spirit as he pleased? It could even form a full-body spirit armor. What did he rely on? A divine artifact. The crown prince must have some kind of camouflage on him, a divine artifact that could deceive the heavenly law. What kind of divine artifact was it that was so powerful that it could deceive the heavenly law? Or was it that the heavenly law was also biased? Luigi squirmed on the ground and he couldn't stop spitting out blood. Just now, he had used all the strength in his body to strike the crown prince's palm at close range, but it was blocked by the spirit armor. All the mystic force had rebounded onto his body, and his internal organs had been overturned. At this moment, Luigi's entire body was in pain. Cough, cough, cough. As he coughed heavily, the blood at the corner of Luigi's mouth kept spreading. However, the crown prince looked at him with an indifferent expression. Suddenly he opened his palm, and a suction force directly sucked Luigi into his hand. Cough, cough, cough. What do you want to do? The crown prince curled his lips disdainfully and coldly spat out 3 words. Search your soul. Luigi's pupils directly contracted countless times. Search his soul? No, that was impossible. How could the young northern prince Mo possibly use this kind of method that the God Realm experts of the upper 3 provinces would use? Searching one's soul was definitely a method invented by God Realm experts to quickly understand the enemy's entire life. Of course, it was also possible that the enemy's divine sense would backfire when using it. Thus, ordinary God Realm experts used it cautiously and wouldn't use this kind of bloody method unless it was absolutely necessary. A person whose soul had been searched would naturally become an idiot who only had brute force and lost consciousness. No, you can't do that to me. Your Highness the Crown Prince, I am Shuntian Prefecture's 3rd manager, I am a mere servant who speaks nonsense and has no sense of shame. This Crown Prince is also somewhat curious. Will the Shuntian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord wantonly mobilize troops and provoke my northern moi for the sake of you old dogs? Crown Prince Mo harumphed coldly, his tone icy and resolute. Kill however many come. Luigi felt a sudden pain in his head as a terrifying and tyrannical aura instantly penetrated his conscious. Like an invisible hand, it directly grabbed his head and wantonly searched through all his memories. The Crown Prince's lips were tightly pursed into a straight line. Following the interpretation of the memory fragments extracted from Luigi's soul remembrance, his eyes abruptly turned even colder. Lower star domain. Find this little girl. I must make sure that she doesn't have everything going her way. She must live like a piece of trash, struggling at death's door like a dog, forever unable to see the end and hope. We can't let her have the chance to go to the divine land. Once any talent appears, there's no need to wait for her to grow up miserably. Just kill her on the spot. Yes, Luigi accepts the order. Luigi screamed with his mouth agape. Like a fish out of water, he stiffly collapsed to the ground. Emolien swiped through the air and took out a brush and paper. She casually drew half of a jade pendant holding a string and carefully examined it. Seeing that it was exactly the same as in Luigi's memory, she put away the brush and paper and looked at Luigi as though she was looking at a dead man. Grabbing Luigi, she pressed down on his head and spat out spiritual energy. Chapter 1052. Far away in a foreign country, a middle-aged man in Shuntian Prefecture was originally cultivating in seclusion in a secret room. Suddenly he howled and spat out a mouthful of blood. He suddenly hugged his head and started rolling on the ground. When the 2 disciples standing guard outside the stone room heard the commotion, they hastily slapped the stone door and shouted in horror, Prefecture Lord! Prefecture Lord, what's wrong? Prefecture Lord? The middle-aged man spat out a mouthful of bloody foam with a pitch-black expression. The stone door was pushed open by the disciples with a crash, and 2 disciples ran over with shocked expressions to support the Shuntian Prefecture Lord who had fallen to the side. Prefecture Lord? Prefecture Lord. Quickly go get the spirit commandeering pill for this old man to consume. The Shuntian Prefecture Lord forced himself to finish speaking in one breath before instantly falling into a severe coma. He didn't expect that he had extracted a wisp of Luigi's spiritual consciousness and stored it in his conscious to make it easier for him to control this person. Unexpectedly, someone actually followed the vine to the melon and used that wisp of Luigi's spiritual consciousness to backfire on him. How hateful. But at this moment he was already completely powerless to think about what exactly happened to Luigi. His conscience had been torn apart by a valiant force, and heart-wrenching, bone-eroding pain spread throughout his body. It would be impossible for him to completely recover without at least half a year. The Shantian prefecture lord had sunk into an unconscious coma, and all the disciples hurried over with abnormally terrified expressions. "Your Highness." Huifeng hastily reached out to support the swaying crown prince and looked at him worriedly. Soul-searching was heaven-defying in itself, and the user would suffer considerable pressure from heavenly law. Moreover, the crown prince had used his divine sense to heavily injure the other party's conscience this time, so he himself would also be slightly shaken. Prince Imo raised his hand slightly to stop Huifeng from speaking. "It's fine. Take some people to search their room and see if there are any other discoveries. If they could find the whereabouts of Ani Prefecture, Luotian Prefecture, and the others in passing, then they would eliminate them all at once." "Yes." Huifeng immediately selected a group of people to search Lu Yiji's room. Emolian's icy gaze landed on Qiu San. The latter quivered, and when he saw Lu Yiji's miserable state, he no longer had any thoughts of resistance. He hastily knelt down and repeatedly kowtowed to beg for mercy. "Your Highness, spare my life, Your Highness. I was just following orders. Qi Wu Yu's sword, which was emitting an ink-colored light, accurately pierced through Qiu San's forehead between his eyebrows. The crown prince's eyes were cold as he pulled out the black moon. A trace of blood slid down the tip of the sword, leaving no trace of blood on the sword. Qiu San's eyes were wide open as he fell to the ground. He couldn't believe that the crown prince had executed him without a word. The crown prince's cold gaze swept over Lu Yiji, who was sitting at the side in a daze, and a chilly smile spread across his lips. "Lu Yiji, when you accepted this mission and came to the lower star domain in high spirits, I'm afraid you didn't expect this. To think that there would be a day when he would become a puppet in the hands of others, losing his soul and consciousness. He would be a slave for the rest of his life, serving others for the rest of his life." A cluster of flames directly swept Lu Yiji up, roasting and refining his flesh and soul before throwing it into a small bronze cauldron that suddenly flew out. Boom. The lid of the cauldron was tightly shut, blocking out all sounds. A trace of coldness flitted across the crown prince's lips. "After we obtain Shantian Prefecture, you will be next. Shantian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord, Gang. Ching." Chapter 1053. The sky was beginning to brighten, and a faint glow from the morning sun shone on the windows of the small courtyard. Arbor, who had wrapped herself into a small cocoon, covered her head and curled up under the blankets. She tossed and turned restlessly, and beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. The nightmare was like a giant beast that wantonly wanted to tear her apart and swallow her whole. She had been having all kinds of messy dreams the whole night. She suddenly opened her eyes, and she breathed a sigh of relief with her forehead covered in sweat. When she struggled to get up, she suddenly realized that her limbs seemed to be crippled, and she could not move them at all. How could this be? She moved her body in shock. Something was wrong. She could not feel her limbs at all. She lay there stiffly, and she stared at the canopy above her head, racking her brains to figure out what was going on. Suddenly, she heard light footsteps, and a pale and slender figure turned in front of her. His dark eyes contained a wisp of dark green light as he sized her up. The cold sweat on Xiao Mu's forehead trickled down with a whoosh. Why was Qin Xian here? Why was Qin Xian here? The second young master reached out to take the blue and white porcelain bowl from the maidservant and sat down beside her. He looked at her with a smile and said, "This young master's little slave girl has been hungry for the past few days. Have you thought it through?" Arbor calmed down in an instant. Dream on. She was dreaming. She had not escaped from the dream yet. In this life she was no longer the little slave girl that he could knead and flatten over and over again. Why did the dream that she had not recalled for a long time appear so clearly in front of her eyes? She did not want to think about it. "Why aren't you speaking?" The young master Omega Kotoku's voice was obviously lower. After being raised by him for 2 years, she was very clear that this was the sign of the young master's anger. Clang. The sound of a porcelain spoon hitting a porcelain bowl suddenly rang out. This peerlessly handsome young master suddenly bent down, stretched out 2 fingers, and tightly pinched her thin and weak chin. "You're really quite stubborn, aren't you? You really think that I don't dare to kill you? Kill me then." Bang. The porcelain bowl was smashed to the ground by the young master and shattered into pieces. The green in his eyes deepened, and the words that came out of his mouth were cold and merciless. "You don't know what's good for you. I'll let you experience what it's like to die of hunger." He stood up and left with a flick of his sleeves. She could only see his cold and emotionless back disappearing from her sight. Arbor was dumbfounded. He felt a chill in his head. What was going on? Why was her mind so clear? Yet, it was as if she had been possessed in her previous life. The hoarse voice coming out of her mouth was different from her own. She was dreaming. Don't panic, she must try her best to wake up. But why did she feel a little creepy and fearful? Could it be that he would never wake up? Would she have to go through the horrors of her previous life again? Arbor's little face scrunched up, and he shifted uneasily on the bed. Emolien, where are you? Sob, Emolien. Emolien. The black feral in his conscience abruptly leaped out on its own. Under the faint sunlight, Emolien's slender, moon-white figure emerged, reaching out to grab the window. Right at this moment, the door to the side room was suddenly kicked open by someone. Six Zheng's slender figure appeared at the doorway, the sword in his hand pointed straight at the shadow in the corner of the room. Who are you? The flute player's hand paused slightly, and the bewitching sound of the flute disappeared. Chapter 1054. The corners of that person's mouth curled into a faint smile under the veil. Then, without even looking back, he flipped out of the window. Don't run. Sixth Jing shouted angrily and chased after him. At this time the door was pushed open again. Qin Susu stared blankly as Emolien's faint figure slowly faded away. The black feral returned to Arbor's conscience. At the same time, Arbor abruptly opened her eyes. She forcefully lifted the bedding on her body and sat up straight. Qin Susu's hand, which was holding a basin of water, paused slightly. Her gaze changed slightly as she scanned the room's surroundings. Who came? Arbor quickly got up and casually put on a robe. When she got up, her body swayed slightly. She suddenly felt her head ache from the nightmares of the night. She couldn't help but reach out to support her forehead. The people in the small courtyard were all startled awake by Six Zheng's shout. They hurriedly put on their clothes, got up, opened the door and walked out of the room. All of them looked at each other, their faces slightly pale, and their eyes were filled with a hint of fear. What was going on? They actually slept so soundly last night and had nightmares all the way until dawn? It would be hard to believe that someone hadn't secretly tampered with them. Are you all right? Qin Susu hurriedly threw down the basin and hurried to Arbor's side. Crown Princess. Lightning's slightly anxious voice came from outside the window. I'm fine. Only after speaking did Arbor realize that her voice was a bit dry. She couldn't help but cough lightly twice. What a powerful nightmare demonic flute. It could actually trap her in the dreamland and almost prevent her from leaving? Arbor pressed her hands on her knees. She only felt waves of dizziness. She hastily ran to the copper basin and retched several times but nothing came out. Miss Qiao? Qin Susu anxiously followed over. What's going on? Do Fengqi ran in noisily. Looking at Qin Susu, who had a normal expression, she suddenly pointed at her and asked loudly, Qin Susu, why are you fine? Why is everyone trapped by nightmares? Everyone's faces are pale but you look completely fine. Did you do this? What nightmare? Qin Susu looked at Do Fengqi in front of her in astonishment and said, I don't know if it was because I was too excited or something last night, but I couldn't fall asleep. Fearing that I would disturb Miss Qiao's sleep, I snuck out of the courtyard. I went to the small forest near the entrance of the base to cultivate. I didn't come back until dawn. I don't know what you're talking about. Cut it out. Everyone was caught by the nightmare and had nightmares all night. Everyone is feeling terrible right now, and you're the only one who's fine. Who would believe that? I really don't know what you're talking about. Stop arguing. Arbor, who felt as if there was a big hammer pounding back and forth in his head, shouted coldly. The two of them stopped bickering and turned to look at her. It's not Susu. It's indeed not Miss Qin. Little Sixth Zheng walked in from the door and glanced worriedly at Arbor. That person was wearing a loose black robe. I couldn't make out their figure, and even their voice was androgynous. Then how can you prove that it wasn't Qin Susu's doing? Do Fengqi steeled her heart and refused to let go of Qin Susu. You're crazy. Qin Susu said irritably, if I knew that nightmare, I'd be the first to kill you, so that you wouldn't be like a shit stirrer all day long, pestering the team endlessly. Chapter 1055. Who are you calling a shit stirrer? Do Fengqi glared, her lungs about to explode from anger at Qin Susu. Don't be noisy. Arbor shouted angrily, only to feel her head hurt even more. Throw her out. Lightning flashed to Do Fengqi's side. Without another word, she grabbed her collar and directly threw her heavily outside the door. Ah. Do Fengqi wasn't that inexperienced to begin with. It was just that she had been startled awake by a nightmare last night. At this time her entire body was somewhat exhausted, and she was caught off guard, so she only realized with a start after being thrown out by lightning. Bam! Arbor directly slammed the door shut in front of Do Fengqi. That way this woman wouldn't be like a crow, constantly making noise by her ear. This flute sound can cause damage to a person's conscience. Fortunately, we didn't hear it for too long, no more than an hour, little Sixth Zheng said seriously. Sixth young master, you were the first to discover this flute sound? Qin Susu asked. Sixth Zheng nodded. At first I was also affected by the nightmare, but then I used a method to break free. Only then did I realize that this flute sound was targeting our small courtyard, causing everyone to be affected by the nightmare. Even those hidden guards by the crown princess's side who had yet to appear had all been affected. As a result, he was burning with anxiety and immediately ran over to investigate Arbor's situation. Only then did he discover that the flute sound was coming from Miss Qiao's room. Little Sixth. Arbor rubbed her unbearably aching head and walked in front of Sixth Zheng without consulting anyone. Raise your hand. Sixth Zheng subconsciously wanted to hide his arm behind his back. However, when he met Miss Qiao's eyes that were fixated on him, he couldn't help but obediently take his arm out from behind his back. Under his rolled-up sleeve there were 2 glaring cuts. The bloodstains were half-dried and the wound was extremely deep. Are you a pig? You're actually so ruthless to yourself. Arbor rolled her eyes at him. Saying that he used a method to break free, it was this stupid method of cutting his own arm to startle himself awake from the pain. Come here and apply medicine. Arbor irritably tugged at him. They're all superficial wounds. It's not a big hindrance. Under her glare, little Sixth Zheng lowered his voice and obediently walked to a stool on the side to sit down. Arbor quickly cleaned his wound and bandaged it. He frowned and said, I don't know who did this to us. I feel that it should be someone who came with us. People from other countries are more likely to make a move. Arbor was puzzled. If this person wanted to deal with her, why didn't he just kill her directly? What was the purpose of making her enter the incubus after such a long detour? Miss Qiao, we need to be extra careful on this trip. Arbor nodded and said, let's go, it's about time. After the 3 of them pushed open the door, Do Fengqi, Duan Siren, Hong Boi, and Fan Xiuming also finished their preparations. However, her gaze was somewhat complicated as she looked at Qin Susu. Presumably, Do Fengqi had already gossiped in front of them just now. Qin Susu shrugged nonchalantly. I don't mind if I'm alone as long as you insist. Can everyone be a bit more united? Duan Siren said, before this matter is clarified, no one should frame a good person, okay? Now that we have a strong enemy waiting for an opportunity to make a move, we should be even more united. Duan Siren continued, after all, that person peeked into our dreams and should be thinking of ways to make things difficult for us. Chapter 1056. Arbor felt all the hairs on her body stand on end. Peeping into her dream? Could it be that everything that appeared in her dream just now had been seen by someone? Soon after, a surge of anger welled up in her heart. Truly abominable fellow. When she thought about how she appeared like a blank sheet of paper in front of a stranger's eyes, Arbor felt incomparably disgusted, as if she had eaten a fly. Holy Maiden. A young woman in the prime of her youth wearing a white veil gracefully walked to the stream and bowed. They have set off. The demonic cult Holy Maiden, Sikong Fuling, seemed to have not heard the woman's words. She minded her own business and sat by the stream, swinging her snow-white legs and kicking the lush green water in amusement. Holy Maiden, do you want this subordinate to send someone to follow them? Sigh. Sikong Fuling lazily half-sprawled on a rock by the stream, one hand propping up her chin as she softly murmured, when I wake up later, I will naturally go find them. Yes, then this subordinate will take her leave first. Sikong Fuling swung her small leg and kicked the water again. Her slender legs slowly crossed as she reached behind the rock and took out a faint jade-green jade flute. Her small hand gently stroked it as she chuckled and muttered to herself, I actually can't see your dream. Arbor, oh Arbor, tell me, how should I torture you? Logically speaking, the Phoenix Nether demonic flute should be able to clearly see anyone's dream when they were captured by a nightmare. However, that savage little girl seemed to be an exception. Her nightmare realm was actually blurry and hazy, and she couldn't see anything clearly. A bit interesting. My Qiao section break. It's not too early for us to enter the forest this time. Everyone tell us what you know. Otherwise we will be delayed when we search for the secret realm. Wei Nanshu was the first to speak. Arbor had 7 people on this trip, including Wei Nanshu, Bailey Wu, and Xiaomi, and 14 others. If there were no accidents, there would be 21 people entering the secret realm. However, at this time, there were many imperial guards following behind the princes and princesses of Northern Wei, Southern Bailey, and Eastern Ing. A large group of people entered the forest. It could be considered as a group of 100 people. If it wasn't for the fact that they were courting death and insisted on charging into the mystical beast horde in the forest, there wouldn't be any major issues with their safety. All Xian beasts had a bit of intelligence. When they saw such a large group of people passing by, they naturally wouldn't provoke them if they were tactful. The entrance to the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm changes every 10 years, but the general area remains the same, Bailey Wu said. Yes, it should be in the center of the Mystic Beast Forest. We have to cross it. 5 days should be enough. Xiaomi nodded in agreement. There are many ferocious beasts in the Mystic Beast Forest. For the sake of everyone's safety, I suggest that we elect a captain. In these 5 days, they would listen to the captain until they safely entered the secret realm. What do you think? Wei Nanshu asked again. Your Highness, you're right. Jin Hongwan from the Jin family fort laughed heartily. This is also for everyone's safety. I'm sorry. I'm not used to putting my life in the hands of strangers. Upon hearing this, Arbor directly walked forward after saying this. Little Sixth Zheng and Qin Susu immediately followed. Hong Baoyi, Dou Fengqi, and the others hesitated for less than a second before following as well. Compared to staying with these other countrymen with ulterior motives, they instead felt that following this cold-faced crown princess seemed to be safer. Chapter 1057. Younger sister, let's go together. Without another word, Xiaomi pulled the royal bodyguard Gong Sunlai and ran out from the back of the group to join Arbor's group. Upon seeing this, Bailey Wu also hurriedly ran over and shouted at Xiaomi, "Cousin, bring me along." Bailey Zhen turned to look sympathetically at Wei Nanshu, whose complexion had darkened, and shrugged. The little crown princess doesn't seem to like you too much. After saying this, she ignored Wei Nanshu's dark expression and followed her elder brother Bailey Wu. As a result, it seemed like they were divided into 2 groups. Arbor's group had 13 people. Wei Nanshu's group, on the other hand, only had 8 people. The 2 groups walked in tandem, not making any noise along the way. They were walking toward the center of the Mystic Beast Forest. The deeper they went, the more likely they would encounter powerful mystic beasts at any time. Wei Nanshu didn't say anything afterward. In his small group, other than the 4 from Northern Wei, there were only 2 Aikido youths, the 2 crown princes of the Eastern Ing Kingdom. They passed through the Mystic Beast Forest's luxuriant foliage uneventfully. This place didn't see sunlight all year round, and the air was humid. The ground was covered in a thick layer of withered leaves, which felt soft when stepped on, making people faintly feel uneasy. Akir reached out to grab Ali's arm, worried that a snake would scuttle out from the leaves if they were caught off guard. After walking for a long time, Arbor suddenly stopped and turned to look at little Sixth Zheng and the others behind her in bewilderment. Why are you all following me? Little Sixth Zheng. He suddenly had a very bad premonition. As expected, the little crown princess's following words nearly angered them to death. I don't know the way, so why aren't you all walking in front of me to lead the way? Arbor frowned with an incredulous expression. Dou Fengqi was about to spit out a mouthful of blood. Xiaomi exclaimed, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, "Younger sister, if you don't know the way, why are you leading the way?" I just don't want to put my life in the hands of an unfamiliar captain. I didn't say I was leading the way. Arbor looked at them speechlessly. After walking for a long time, no one came out to lead the way, so she couldn't help but speak up. Duan Siren chuckled. It's okay. Anyway, I think there's only one path ahead. Let's keep going. As long as we're not mistaken, we'll be fine. Oh. Arbor nodded. I'll lead the way. Qin Susu walked out from the group and said, I come to the Mystic Beast Forest to train every year, so I'm quite familiar with this area. Dou Fengqi glanced at her suspiciously and held back her words. After Dou Fengqi's outburst, Duan Siren and the others were also quite suspicious of Qin Susu. However, they were able to keep their composure better than Dou Fengqi, so they didn't say anything and just nodded. Qiao Mu walked beside Qin Susu, shoulder to shoulder. There was no distinction between day and night in the Mystic Beast Forest, so they could only estimate the time. At this time, it was almost 10 o'clock in the night, and everyone's physical exertion was quite large. Qin Susu turned to ask Arbor, Miss Qiao, let's stop here for today and rest here. How about it? Arbor naturally agreed without any objections. Wei Nanshu and company, who were following behind their group, also stopped and started to set up simple and crude tents. Chapter 1058. Starting a fire might attract beasts, so everyone was chewing on dry rations for dinner. To avoid attracting attention, Arbor also ate dry pastries. After casually stuffing her little belly with 2 mouthfuls, she leaned against a tree and closed her eyes to rest. Last night's nightmare made her extremely uncomfortable, so it was also good to seize the time to make up for lost sleep. You all go to sleep. I'll keep watch, little Sixth Zheng said to the others. Thank you for your trouble, Sixth Young Master. Hong Bai said politely and didn't decline. He hurriedly found a slightly drier place to rest. In the middle of the night, Arbor abruptly opened her eyes. Little Sixth Zheng immediately sensed her movements and turned to look at her. Were you awakened by a nightingale's cry? Arbor shook her head. She took out the chubby little white squirrel from her bosom and stroked its warm fur. Just now, she seemed to have felt the little fella's hooves move. Could it be her misconception? Because everyone had things on their minds, they woke up one after another after resting for 4 to 6 hours. The forest was still gloomy, with only a few bits of sunlight sprinkling on the little crown princess's face through the layers of branches and leaves. She hugged a snow-white little pet and leaned against a tree. She held a bag in one hand and fed the little pet something with the other. Do Fengqi shot her a glance and was instantly stupefied. You? What are you doing? She only saw that jade-white little hand lift slightly, and a red crystal was stuffed into the little white pet's mouth. Heavens! What did she just see? A nouveau riche was feeding her pet a large amount of crystal cores. Arbor cast her a glance and continued to calmly feed her pet. Yesterday, Lightning and the others had secretly hunted many mystic beasts nearby. These crystal cores were extremely good supplements for the little white squirrel. Xiao Mu did not know when the little fellow would wake up, so she reached up to stroke its soft fur. Duan Siren walked over and asked, "Shall we set off?" "Let's set off." Qin Susu hadn't finished speaking when her expression suddenly changed. Careful. A small emerald green snake suddenly poked its head out from between the leaves. It spat out its tongue and bit Arbor's wrist. Arbor took out a silver needle from his fingertips. Just as he was about to stab the snake to death, he suddenly saw the fluffy white tail in his arms move. With a paw sound, it accurately pressed the snake under the tail. Arbor was slightly delighted. The little white squirrel is awake? She lowered her head and saw that the little fellow was still lying on her lap. Its eyes were closed and it was motionless. However, its tail seemed to have a mind of its own and swayed back and forth before it was retracted. When everyone looked down, they were all shocked. That seemingly soft tail had actually crushed the emerald green snake into a meat patty. Even the snake's gallbladder seemed to have been crushed into powder. The seemingly weak little pet by Miss Chiao's side was actually so extraordinary? Arbor was also a bit surprised. He stood up with the little fellow in his arms and nodded at Qin Susu. "Let's go." Do Fengqi's eyes flashed. She ran to Arbor's side and gave her a rare friendly smile. "Miss Chiao, did you buy this little pet from a beast pet store?" "No." Arbor shook her head. Do Fengqi asked with a grin, "I think this little pet is quite cute. I don't know if Miss Chiao is willing to part with it. I can buy it at a high price." "I'm short on money?" Arbor turned around and looked at her with an extremely serious gaze. Do Fengqi was speechless. Chapter 1059. The dignified northern Prince Mo's consort could lack anything but money. "Even if I gave it to you, you wouldn't be able to raise it." Arbor was expressionless as she pulled out her knife and stabbed her glass heart again. Couldn't afford to raise it. How precious was this? Everyone silently glanced at the little white squirrel. "I've already fed it over 8,000 crystal cores." Our dear Xiaomu wouldn't stop until she shocked everyone to death. This time, Do Fengqi, who was following beside her, was completely stupefied. "This little pet doesn't eat anything else but crystal cores? It also eats high-grade and above medicinal pills. It doesn't really like low-grade and mid-grade medicinal pills." Everyone silently shut their mouths and swept a disdainful glance at the little crown princess. "Can't be bothered to talk to a nouveau riche like you." Once she spoke, she felt like her heart was being pricked. Do Fengqi also ceased nagging, and the group hurried toward the forest's central region at the fastest speed possible. The closer they got to the central region, the more ferocious beasts suddenly scuttled out to battle with their group. Everyone had the idea of ending the battle as soon as possible. They would kill as many of them as they could. Arbor didn't make a move and kept picking up scraps behind Lightning and the rest. She took out the crystal cores of the mystic beasts they killed one by one and placed them in her own small pouch. Do Fengqi's eyes reddened as she watched, and she couldn't help but grumble. Qin Susu then cast a glance at her and sarcastically said, "Who told you not to bring a faster Imperial Guard?" The group fought and stopped, and after killing several mystic beasts, Eastern Yin Kingdom's crown prince accidentally knocked down a tree. Very quickly, a swarm of tiger-tail bees rapidly flapped their thin wings and burrowed out of the thicket. "Fuck, Crown Prince. You knocked down a tiger-tail bee tree." Everyone covered their heads and scurried away, not daring to stay a moment longer. Arbor hurriedly took out a piece of clothing from her inner world and wrapped her small head up, only revealing two large, blinking eyes. Little Sixth Zheng turned around with his sword in hand and glanced at the little lady's crafty speed. He couldn't help but laugh. Everyone was chased by the bee swarm the entire way. From time to time, they would turn around and send out mystic energy to disperse some of the densely packed bee swarm. "Run towards the water source. You bastards, do you even know how to lead the way? Watch out, watch out. Fuck, don't stab the back of my head." Arbor took out a medicine bottle from his pocket, poured out several medicinal pills, and stuffed them to Little Sixth Zheng, Lightning, and the others. "Wasp's tail is poisonous. Ingjian, this time I'm going to die because of you. Miss Chow, do you still have any antidote pills? Give me one, give me one." Bailey Wu anxiously flipped over and flew to Arbor's side, reaching out his hand to ask for the medicine. "Sister, I wrapped my head up like this, I can't see anything." Xiaomi's head crashed into a tree as she cried out nervously. Everyone was speechless. "Are you joking? Can't you keep your eyes on the road?" Xiao Mu suddenly felt that she was leading a group of idiots on a secret expedition. "There's water in front, a water source. Quick, jump in. If we jump in, the swarm won't target us anymore." Arbor speechlessly watched as Bailey Wu, that idiot, took the antidote pill first, and then jumped into the pool ahead with a splash. The two royal guards followed suit and jumped in, exclaiming, "Your Highness." Wait. Arbor couldn't stop them in time, and the two had already jumped into the water. Soon after, everyone looked on helplessly as the two royal guards were swiftly sliced into pieces by the mirror-like water surface. Their blood mixed into the pool, making one's hair stand on end. The entrance to the mystic realm. Chapter 1060. At this time, Bailey Wu popped his head out of the water and looked in astonishment at the group of people with strange expressions on the shore. "Why are you making such a big fuss? Hurry up and come down. The swarm is coming." Everyone looked speechlessly at this careless fellow. He dared to be so rash in the mystic beast forest and recklessly jump into a pool of unknown depth. This southern Bailey's fourth prince was truly a jokester. His luck seemed to be pretty good as well, for he found the right place with a casual jump. This place should be the entrance to the mystic beast forest secret realm that opened once every 10 years. "Lightning. This subordinate is here. Hurry and leave. Return to the base and wait for me," Arbor instructed. After Lightning and the rest received their orders, she turned around and dashed to the pool with Little Sixth Zheng and the rest. The two looked at each other and directly jumped into the pool. Arbor was first stimulated by the ice-cold pool water, and then she felt a trace of warmth automatically wrap around her body. It instantly covered her limbs and bones, allowing her to stretch her body to her heart's content in the water. Could it be that after comprehending the power of the water spirit, she innately had an incomparable affinity with any type of water? Arbor felt that her limbs were very relaxed as she tossed and turned in the water. She could move however she wanted. It was too comfortable. After Little Sixth Zheng entered the water, he added a defensive barrier around himself. He couldn't help but be startled when he looked at the lady beside him. Miss Chow was like a fish back in water. Her entire body seemed to have merged into one with the pool. Her breathing was very soft and slow, almost disappearing. She could shuttle back and forth in the water to her heart's content without adding a defensive barrier. That appearance was too beautiful. Arbor was the first to sink into the pool. The group of people following behind her all kept their mouths tightly shut. They occasionally opened their eyes and looked at her with incredulous gazes. Miss Chow was like a fish in the water. The heavy water pressure seemed to be completely unguarded against her and allowed her to toss and turn as she wished. Her legs seemed to have transformed into a fish tail as they swayed gently. Even she herself found it very strange that she could open her bright eyes without any difficulty in the water. It turned out that after fusing with the water spirit, he could enter and leave the water like a fish without any effort. This was too good. A group of colorful little fishes swam over and circled around her. They swayed their tails for a while and swam around her for a long time before dispersing one after another in jubilation. Following behind them, little Sixth Zhang and the others were dumbstruck. If Dou Fengqi could open her mouth to speak, she would definitely not be able to hold back her urge to grab Arbor and ask him how to attract the fish. The aquatic plants in this pool were all perfect, without any signs of mutation. As they walked through the Mystic Beast Forest, they more or less encountered a few mutated plants. Compared to other places, the rate of mutation in the Mystic Beast Forest was considered very slow. However, this pond did not change in the slightest. The water was extremely clear. If such a water source was destroyed by the organization behind it, even Arbor would feel heartache. It would be great if he could take it into Paradise Planet, Arbor thought whimsically. A circle of light suddenly appeared in front of him. It was obvious that they had reached the bottom. The entrance to the secret realm was here. Arbor swung her legs and swam toward that circle of light. Chapter 1061. Behind her, Dou Fengqi and the others watched anxiously. Aya, if the crown princess was the first to enter, wouldn't she gain all the benefits for nothing? They watched as that nimble little figure slid into the white halo all of a sudden. Dou Fengqi, Ingjian, and the others anxiously kicked at the water beneath their feet. However, although they had activated their defensive barriers to block the water, the deeper they went, the greater the water pressure, and their sliding speed became very slow. At this time, everyone felt that their defensive barriers were about to burst. Little Sixth Zhang and Bailey Wu were the first to reach the halo. Their hearts relaxed slightly and they slid toward the light. Once they entered the light, a feeling of weightlessness instantly came from beneath their feet. Their entire bodies were pulled down by gravity, and they plummeted downwards with a whoosh. Little Sixth Zhang and Bailey Wu were alarmed at the same time, and they circulated mystic energy to protect their bodies, doing their utmost to stabilize their falling speed. Bam! Bailey Wu propped himself on the ground with a fist, and his half-squatted figure slightly relaxed. Little Sixth Zhang's situation was slightly better than his. It was just that when he landed, his body swayed left and right a few times before he steadied himself. Looking up, they saw an inverted gourd valley's entrance, and the lush greenery couldn't be concealed from their eyes. They saw a giant gray ape sitting at the entrance like a small hill, blocking that gourd valley's entrance. Ding-ling, dang-lang. The fine sound of a bell was accompanied by light footsteps. Sikong Fulling's slender figure appeared beside that pool, and she looked around with a grin. The entrance is here. Yes, Holy Maiden. A masked woman slightly cupped her hands and bowed to her. Does Holy Maiden want to go in now? I hate water the most. It makes my clothes wet every time. Sikong Fulling faintly complained. Her figure swayed slightly and she entered the water. At this time, Dou Fengqi, Qin Susu, Hong Boi, Ing Jian, Wei Nanshu, and the others also stepped into the halo and entered this secluded valley overflowing with lush greenery. Naturally, they also saw the giant gray ape blocking the entrance of the valley. Dou Fengqi almost immediately shifted her gaze to Arbor. Logically speaking, the crown princess was the first to enter the valley, but what was she doing? She was sitting leisurely on a big rock, gnawing on a corn cob in her hand that half of the corn on the cob was already eaten. It was obvious that they had already started eating before they arrived. Bailey Zhen blinked and covered her mouth as she giggled. Miss Chow, why aren't you thinking of a way to go in? Instead, you're eating non-stop here? Arbor glanced at her nonchalantly. I'm a little hungry. It was true. Just now, he had passed through the pool without any hindrance. As soon as he entered this mystic realm, he felt so hungry that his stomach was growling. Perhaps it was due to the fact that he had to expend a lot of water spirit energy to assimilate into the water, but unknowingly he had expended a little too much of it. This was only her own conjecture, so she couldn't be sure. She didn't know the exact reason. Since he was hungry, he would just eat. After finishing the corn on the cob, Arbor took out a banana from her inner world. She had just peeled off a bit of skin when she heard rustling sounds coming from the front. That giant ape actually moved its butt to the side, revealing a small path that only one person could pass through. Arbor's small hand that was peeling the banana paused in midair just like that, and he looked at that giant ape in astonishment. Chapter 1062. They saw that little crown princess holding a banana in one hand as she scampered in front of the giant ape. She suddenly stuffed the banana into the crook of the giant ape's arm that was dangling on the ground, and her figure flashed into the valley like a wisp of smoke. Everyone was stupefied and instantly felt disheveled. Fuck. A single banana was the entry pass? This was too outlandish. Dou Fengqi wanted to keep up with Arbor's pace, so she hurriedly ran over as well. It was just that the giant ape had already blocked the passage that was only wide enough for one person. The giant ape's small black eyes stared vigilantly at Do Fengqi in front of it, as if saying, "If you dare to take one step closer, I'll immediately tear you apart." The eyes of the two Aikido youths lit up slightly, and they hurriedly walked forward. Each of them took out a banana from their inner worlds. This was a personal item that they had hidden for a very long time. Ever since this world mutated, ordinary fruits like bananas were practically hard to come by. However, it was still quite worth it to use a banana to exchange for a secret realm entry pass. This pair of youths took out bananas and happily handed them over, fully thinking that the giant ape would definitely happily make way for them. Unexpectedly. Woo roar roar. This giant ape was actually very angry, and it slapped away the two bananas in front of it. Its two gray furry arms forcefully pounded the ground, instantly sending sand and pebbles flying. Despicable human disciple, you actually dared to use a banana to swindle this ape. Everyone looked at it dumbfoundedly. The corner of little Six Zheng's mouth couldn't help but twitch. This difference was too big. The crown princess could pass through this valley entrance with a single banana, but if it was someone else, the giant ape actually disdained them. Little Sixth Zheng walked forward and bowed to this giant ape senior. Then he took out two mid-grade spirit stones from his inner world. These were spirit stones that he had obtained by chance during one of his experiential training. Although they weren't very good, they were the most precious items he currently had. The giant ape swept a glance over them, and then reluctantly extended its long arms to sweep up the two spirit stones. It then opened up a path to the side for little Sixth Zheng to pass through. Seeing this, everyone took out all kinds of treasures from their inner worlds and handed them to the giant ape sincerely. The giant ape accepted some and rejected some. When it came to Do Fengqi, she handed over a high-grade pill. In the end, the giant ape didn't even look at it. With a slap, it sent the pill flying. Do Fengqi cried out in alarm and ran to pick up her pills. After she finished picking them up, her teammates had all entered the valley, leaving her alone outside and not allowed to enter. She couldn't help but become anxious and shrieked, "What the hell do you want?" She wanted to rush into the valley. However, the huge ape was not courteous at all and directly slapped down with its palm. If Do Fengqi had not rolled on the ground and dodged in time, her head would have been the result of the shattered rocks. Do Fengqi's face was ashen as she glared at the giant ape in front of her. She was so anxious that she was about to cry. Everyone had gone in except for her, who was stuck outside. Wasn't this a joke? She had painstakingly passed through the mystic beast forest and finally found the forest's secret realm, but she was blocked outside the door. She could only stare at the rich mystic energy inside. Hee, am I late? A crisp laugh made Do Fengqi turn her head to look. She saw the demonic cult's holy maiden slowly walking toward her with a faint smile on her lips. At this time, Arbor had already run into the valley with the little white squirrel in his arms. Chapter 1063. As for the others, when they entered this place, they immediately felt the dense, profound energy that flowed endlessly towards them. All of the young faces revealed excited smiles. Heavens! The mystic energy here was so dense. If they cultivated here for a month, it would be equivalent to cultivating outside for a year. Wei Nanshu took a stroll around the valley with his men, his brows slightly furrowed. "Brother Nanshu," Jin Hongwan softly called out, "we've already smoothly entered, why do you still look unhappy?" Wei Nanshu was displeased when he thought of the heavy loss they had suffered when they entered the valley. The difference between the giant ape's attitude towards them and towards Prince Mo's consort was too big. Anyone could see it. This little crown princess was too strange. She was the only one who used a banana to exchange for an entrance ticket. As for the others, they were just like them, using the most valuable items on their bodies to exchange for admission tickets. For example, he used a short blade spirit weapon to exchange for an entrance ticket. Roar 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 roar. The giant ape's roar filled the valley as if it was angrily roaring. Immediately after, a graceful figure wrapped in a thin red robe chuckled and glided through the air. "Senior giant ape, I've already paid the entrance fee. Please let me pass." Wei Nanshu looked up and a faint trace of amazement flashed through his eyes. It was the incomparably gorgeous demonic sect saintess. Back then at the entrance of the base, he only caught a glimpse of her. This woman's blurred and deep eyes were like thorns that fiercely pierced into the depths of his heart. She was truly a graceful stunner. TSK. Wei Nanshu clenched his fists and slightly lowered his head. He was very clear about the most important mission of this trip. As a restrained and aloof prince, he naturally wouldn't make such a low-level mistake. "Brother Nanshu?" Jin Hongwan suspiciously glanced at him. It's nothing. Let's walk around the valley again. Actually, this valley wasn't big. Wei Nanshu had already walked around earlier. The valley's entrance was slender and the valley's interior was wide like a gourd. The valley was shrouded in mystic energy all year round and was covered in white mist. There were craggy rocks and fragrant grass everywhere. In the distance there was a crude stone pavilion, and there was nothing inside. Other than that, there was only a small house buried in the depths of the sea of flowers. However, once they got close they would be pushed far away by a powerful force. They could only watch from afar and could not get close at all. This small house was the ultimate goal of his trip. Wei Nanshu's breathing tightened as he clenched his fists. If I'm not mistaken, there must be that thing in the house, the 10,000-year Xuanji core. Bang, bang, bang. The heavy footsteps of the giant ape approached from afar. After everyone gathered in the valley, they couldn't help but look at each other. They saw that Dou Fengqi's clothes were torn and her hairpins were scattered. She cut a very sorry figure. When the giant ape swept its gaze over Dou Fengqi with contempt, it was filled with ridicule. This giant ape was too human-like. Everyone muttered in their hearts. They did not know what Dou Fengqi had handed over to make this giant ape senior look down on her. The giant ape didn't pay any attention to them. Instead, it carried a thick and heavy stone tablet as it walked over. The sound it made was earth-shattering. Boom! A huge stone tablet was placed on the ground by the giant ape's long arms. Everyone hastily gathered around to take a look. They saw a line of eye-catching small words carved on the stone tablet. Chapter 1064. If the juniors who entered this mystic realm could raise their cultivation by 1 level within 10 days, they would be the first to enter the small hut, meet esteemed Xuanji and choose a peerless secret treasure. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw this. Especially Wei Nanshu, even his breathing started to tighten. This was a rare opportunity. No, it should be said that this was their only chance to approach the small hut. They reckoned that even if senior Xuanji's 10,000-year-old Xuanji core did not exist, there would still be other treasures in the small hut. While everyone was excited, the giant ape's gray fluffy arm knocked on the stone tablet again. Everyone looked down and realized that there were a few rows of small words carved at the bottom of the stone tablet. They were too excited previously and did not see those small words at all. They saw the words carved on the tablet. This mystic realm will separate you and send you into a sealed training space. Mystic beast phantoms will be automatically generated according to your cultivation. Once you are killed by the mystic beast phantoms in battle, your original body will die. Remember this. Once the training begins, you cannot leave the sealed space before the time limit is up. Those who wish to participate in the training can press their fingerprints on the stone tablet, which will immediately activate and enter the numbering and scoring mode. Those who do not participate in the training will be forcibly transported out at the end of the 5-day period. In addition, those who are still unable to break through their current cultivation realm within 20 days will be forcibly terminated and transported out of the mystic realm. Those who enter my Mystic Beast Forest Mystic Realm and participate in the training will be regarded as outer sect disciples of my Xuanji school. Those who can persist in the Mystic Realm for 15 days will be rewarded with a Xuanji pill that increases cultivation and expands mystic consciousness. Work hard. Work hard. Work harder. This seat will wait for you in the small hut. Spirit artifacts and secret treasures are all available. What are you waiting for? Everyone looked at each other, speechless for a while. Why did they feel that this was so unreliable? This senior Xuanji's last few sentences seemed to be a slogan. Sikong Fuling giggled. Hee heavens, this senior Xuanji is actually such an interesting person. This is too surprising. The Xuanji school seems to have perished 300 years ago. Then may I ask what benefits there were to becoming an outer sect disciple of the Xuanji school? You don't admit that you are ignorant and inexperienced. The pills that senior Xuanji can produce must be extraordinary. That's a mighty senior from 100 years ago. Bailey Wu was the first to run forward. He pressed his large palm on the stone tablet and said, I'm the first to sign up for the training. As soon as he finished speaking, a white light fell on his body. After the number 1 was quickly generated, Bailey Wu immediately disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Your Highness. The 2 southern Bailey youths couldn't help but exclaim. Haha, 4th brother has really made our southern Bailey proud. His courage was commendable. This princess will also give you a thumbprint. Bai Li Zhen rolled her eyes and smiled slyly. She placed her small hand on the stone tablet and in the next second she was sent away. The remaining 2 youths from southern Bailey also hurriedly pressed down their handprints, but they forgot that they could not follow the footsteps of His Highness and the princess. Instead, they were directly isolated in a sealed training space. When Xiaomu returned with the little white squirrel in her arms, she realized that there was no one left in the valley. Where did the crowd go? Arbor wasn't in a hurry either. In any case, the mountain valley scenery was rather beautiful, and the profound energy aura was dense, so he could cultivate wherever he Saturday. Chapter 1065. After strolling for so long, she was also hungry, so she found a small mound to sit down. She took out a bowl of rice and 2 side dishes, a combination of meat and vegetables as well as a bowl of soup, from the food box. After eating her fill, she hugged her little white squirrel and slept. She slept for a good several hours. After waking up, she immediately felt refreshed. She raised her hand to stretch, but when she turned her small face, her small hand suddenly froze in midair. Wasn't this the Eastern Ing Kingdom's crown prince, Ingjian? Why was he standing behind her so sneakily? Arbor took a closer look and couldn't help but be amused. As it turned out, Ingjian was dealing with several roaring mystic beasts in a flurry. The mystic beasts were pouncing after him, but the strange thing was that no matter how Ingjian ran, he couldn't seem to run out of a certain range. He kept running back and forth in the same field, anxiously running for his life. All of a sudden he was pinned down by a mystic beast. Whoa! That mystic beast bit his arm, and Ingjian was in so much pain that his complexion turned pale. He rolled twice on the ground, broke free from the beast's mouth and crawled up to start running again. Arbor took out a fresh and juicy apple, nibbling on it while admiring it. After watching for a while, she felt somewhat bored. This Ingjian was so timid and effeminate when fighting, prioritizing defense. He didn't look like a brave man at all. Arbor turned and left. Not long after, she saw little Sixth Zheng at a stream bank, who was similarly fighting several giant mystic beasts. But little Sixth Zheng was much more refreshed when killing them. The long sword in his hand fluttered like a butterfly flitting through flowers, and he disposed of the mystic beasts in a few moves. However, after he dealt with those mystical beasts, the mystical beasts turned into white mist, and in the next instant they condensed into one after another. They were ferocious beasts that were 1 level higher than the ones before, and with a roar they pounced over. Little Sixth Zheng's gaze focused, and he covered his sword with mystic energy. White light flashed and he stabbed at the mystic beasts' necks. Arbor stared blankly from the outside, even forgetting to chew on her apple. When she saw little Sixth Zheng finish off those mystic beasts again, the white mist dispersed and slowly condensed into a large winged beast. When it pounced into the air and let out a fierce roar, she instantly understood. Ingjian, little Six, and the others were all isolated in an independent space that was filled with profound energy. They were fighting and cultivating with profound beasts. These Xian beasts were probably condensed from the dense Xian energy in the mystic realm. So as long as they were not released from the mystic realm, the Xian beasts would be endless. Arbor couldn't help but be speechless. What a savage cultivation method. She did not know how long she would be imprisoned in there. If her profound energy was exhausted, what should she do? No wonder he didn't see Xiaolu and the others before. It turned out that they were busy cultivating. The strange thing was that her eyes could actually see everyone in the sealed space. Along the way he stopped and watched everyone's training. When he saw Do Fengqi, that girl, shrieking in terror and despair, pounding on the realm wall, that couldn't be seen clearly with the naked eye in an attempt to escape from the savage independent space, Arbor couldn't help but stop and admire it. Thump, thump, thump. Until a series of heavy footsteps sounded beside her. Arbor turned around to look, and the corner of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. This giant ape was actually looking at her with a resentful expression, as though she was very naughty and mischievous. Roar, roar, roar. The giant ape roared at her a few times, as though it was reprimanding a disobedient child. Its long hairy gray arm abruptly reached over and picked her up. What did it want to do? Arbor instantly had a bad premonition. Chapter 1066. After a round of dizziness, Arbor immediately felt that the surrounding mystic energy had become much more concentrated. Damn, she had been directly thrown into a sealed training space by Senior Giant Ape, who hated Iron for not living up to its expectations, and was forced to undergo training. Narrowing her eyes, Arbor vigilantly reached out to summon the feral in her consciousness. In the next moment, the floating mystic energy around her quickly condensed, and suddenly turned into a giant snake covered in steel thorns, opening its mouth to bite her. Wow! It was such a huge snake that it almost filled up the entire sealed space. As it moved, the row of steel thorns on its body was almost about to pierce her small body. What a large, ugly snake. It slithered on the ground, its skin rolling, making Xiaomu feel nauseous. Raising her hand, a line of fire flew out from the ferrule, instantly attacking the snake's back. Only a light chi sound was heard, but it only burned off a dozen of its steel thorns, even charring a lump of coarse snake skin. Level 12 Mystic Beast. Or maybe level 13. It was clearly condensed from mystic energy, but it was like a substantial snake. Arbor took a deep breath. Ignoring the aura concealing talisman on her body, this sealed space gave her a mystic beast of the same cultivation level. Arbor slightly raised her hand, and a circle of lustrous and floating ebony talismans instantly suspended in the air, quietly revolving around her body. Activate the Mystic Energy Guiding Talisman Array. Within 2 hours, the mystic energy between heaven and earth would be endlessly absorbed into one's body, to replenish one's rapidly depleted mystic energy. This was a talisman array made up of 60 high-grade blue mystic energy guiding talismans, and its power was different from the previous mid-grade talisman arrays. Not only could the duration of the mystic energy of heaven and earth be doubled, the speed of the mystic energy was also imperceptibly changed. As soon as the talisman array was activated, all the mystic energy hibernating in the entire secret realm, one after another, vibrated, and then simultaneously rushed towards Arbor's side as fast as lightning. Standing outside the sealed space and watching, the giant ape's 2 small black beady eyes suddenly lit up, and it suddenly clapped its pair of furry palms, seemingly very happy. This little guy was too smart, instantly comprehending the principle of the endless mystic beasts fighting in this sealed space. The profound beasts in the sealed space were all condensed from the profound energy in this place. In other words, the more and faster the 21 of them absorbed the profound energy in this place, the thinner the profound energy stored in the mystic realm would become. As a result, the speed at which the profound beasts were condensed would only become slower and slower as the profound energy in the secret realm flowed away, until, if the profound energy here was completely absorbed, then the sealed space would naturally be unlocked, and there would be no need to wait for 10 days. An unending stream of mystic energy gathered above Xiaomu's head, forming a nebula vortex. The concentrated mystic energy formed a sphere that forcefully enveloped the sealed space Xiaomu was in. At the same time, Arbor summoned his startled swan dagger. Their minds were connected. The startled swan dagger swiftly flew to the snake's vital point and stabbed through it in midair. The giant snake immediately turned into a white mist and gradually dissipated. Following closely, waves of dense profound energy rolled around Arbor's side, and gradually revealed a sinister snake head. Arbor closed her eyes and sat down, concealing her spirit and mind, sinking her energy into her dantian. Her consciousness and the startled swan dagger merged into one. The startled swan dagger was her, and she was the startled swan dagger. With an unstoppable force, she rapidly harvested the lifeblood of the profound beasts in the sealed space. On the stone tablet, her results were constantly breaking the records of everyone else. Chapter 1067. Arbor's ranking was originally 0 because while the others were working hard to kill profound beasts in the sealed space, she was still strolling around outside. In actual fact, there was a gap between her points and the others. But now her points were rising at a crazy speed. If Dou Fengqi and the rest were here and saw such a shocking record, they would definitely be shocked speechless. The startled swan dagger was a spirit weapon with extremely strong destructive power. When Arbor was controlling it, she didn't need any fancy moves or profound skills. From start to end there was only one move, a straightforward killing move. The profound beasts that appeared in the sealed space were all slaughtered by the startled swan dagger. As time passed, Arbor was fighting while absorbing the profound energy in the mystic realm. With her as the center, the speed of profound beasts condensing had indeed slowed down. Arbor's consciousness wantonly controlled this startled swan dagger, becoming more and more proficient as her mind and heart were connected. 2 days and 1 night later, Dou Fengqi was awoken by the piercing pain in her arm as she blankly opened her eyes. Suddenly, she saw a ferocious profound beast tearing at her arm with its big mouth. That wave of pain was as though it was heart-piercing and bone-eroding, causing her to quiver and her mind to clear up a little. Earlier she was too tired. After 2 to 3 days of continuous fighting, her limbs were so sore that she couldn't even lift them up. So much so that in the process of fighting with the profound beast she actually fainted. Luckily the profound beast didn't bite her head, otherwise she would have long been dead. Actually, Dou Fengqi and the rest could feel that the speed of profound beasts condensing in the sealed space had obviously slowed down by a lot. Previously, after killing a batch of profound beasts, another batch would condense within minutes and there wasn't even time to take medicine. But now it was different. Do Fengqi propped herself up with difficulty and chopped off this virtual profound beast's head. Seeing the profound beast in front of her turn into a white mist and disappear without forming a new profound beast, Do Fengqi's tensed heart gradually relaxed as she heaved a sigh of relief. She hurriedly took out the few remaining medicinal pills from her inner world and consumed one. This kind of medicinal pill was a low-grade profound recovering pill that she bought from the pill house. Its effect was very ordinary but the price was extremely expensive. After eating it, she could only recover 10% of her profound energy in a short period of time. She was still lying on the ground like a dead dog, panting slightly. Do Fengqi even felt that 10 years had passed in the sealed space. If she could, she really didn't want to move a single finger right now. However, in reality it had only been 3 days. Furthermore, other than the first day when the Shen beasts surged forward at an extremely fast speed, from the second day onwards, they would at least have some time to rest after killing a batch of Shen beasts. Little Six Zheng also discovered that his condition had clearly improved a lot. After he finished killing this batch of mystic beasts, he panted heavily, and the long sword in his hand drooped slightly. He focused his mind and seized the time to adjust the mystic energy in his body to recover. According to his estimation, only 3 days had passed. Next, they would have to stay in the sealed space for about 7 days before they could leave. He was very tired, but he couldn't slack off. The Crown Prince of the Eastern Yin Kingdom lay on his back on the ground, panting heavily. His eyes were wide open as he stared at the clear blue sky. He didn't expect that the sky in this mystic realm would be so blue, but now he felt like he was in hell. If he could choose again, he would rather die than go to this hell. Chapter 1068. Jade Color Parlor. The most famous brothel on Guanlan City's East Street usually entertained high officials, nobles and wealthy merchants. No matter how difficult the world was, there were plenty of wealthy people who would throw away a fortune for Jade Color Parlor's top hostess, Miss Ran. At this time, in a private room on the 3rd floor, people were toasting each other. Cult Master, come. Let this humble one toast you first. The person who raised the cup had hazy, drunken eyes and he seemed a bit groggy. This person was in his 40s and had the typical round, earthy appearance. He had a pair of especially small eyes, and if one didn't look carefully, they probably wouldn't be able to find those 2 slits. The man he addressed as Cult Master was merely in his early 20s. Dressed in a gorgeous purple robe, he rested his chin on one hand and leaned against the wooden armchair. His eyes narrowed as he smiled faintly, exuding a seductive aura. That's right, seductive. He was a man with feminine features and bright eyes. Those eyes were very seductive, as if they were born with a trace of affection, causing one's heart to thump like a little deer. Regardless of gender, old or young, he was captivating. It could be said that this cult master's appearance was several times more exquisite and outstanding than all the women present. It also caused the hearts of all the ladies to sway wildly, and their gazes were very hazy. It was truly a case of intoxicating oneself rather than wine, and bewitching oneself rather than lust. Today this humble one is fortunate enough to invite Cult Master. It is truly this humble one's honor. Jing Chao piled a smile on his face and bowed to that man. He turned to look at second manager Qi, who was a bit drunk, and shouted, "Idiot Qi, why aren't you refilling Lord Cult Master's wine? Why are you the only one drinking?" "Ah yes. Second manager Qi hurriedly stood up with a face full of smiles, and his small eyes narrowed even further. The young man addressed as Cult Master casually raised his cup and drained it in one gulp. Pushing aside the female attendants on both sides, Lord Cult Master seemed to be somewhat impatient with these women who were eagerly sticking to him. Jing Chao chuckled. It seems that Cult Master is dissatisfied with these vulgar women. That's right, how could Cult Master take fancy to these sluts who have been toyed with countless times? Clap clap. Jing Chao clapped his hands lightly. Not long after the applause ended, a middle-aged procuress wearing brightly colored makeup, Sun Yang, walked in, twisting her slender waist, and bowed with a smile. "Honorable guests, what can I do for you? Go find a few more decent goods. Remember, they must be clean. Our sect master hates those dirty things the most." Yes. The cult master sat there with a faint smile on his face. He narrowed his eyes and glanced at the fat officials in front of him. At this time, after 3 rounds of wine, these old fogies no longer cared about etiquette. Each of them held a beautiful woman and kept touching her up and down. His fingertips tapped lightly under the table, as if he was already used to this kind of banquet that was filled with the smell of corruption. In fact, if State Uncle Zheng hadn't informed him of a big deal today, he wouldn't have come to discuss it in person. Although it was quite boring, he couldn't help but feel slightly excited at the thought of that big deal. Oh, it wasn't State Uncle Zheng but the former State Uncle Zheng. The cult master curled his lips mockingly. It was true that even a broken boat had a 3-inch nail. Although this former State Uncle Zheng's property had been confiscated, it could be seen that he was still hiding some personal goods from the rewards he provided. This is the former Minister of Works. Chapter 1069. The cult master curled his lips in an indescribably flirtatious smile. I already know your identities. Let's get straight to the point. Weren't these old fellows just a motley crew who had suffered under the crown prince's hands and had been pulled down one after another? To put it bluntly, the cult master actually didn't really want to pay attention to them. He only came here for the sake of the few treasures he received. Moreover, he really wanted to meet that man again. As if thinking of something, he subconsciously raised his hand to support his chin, and a dark glint flashed through his eyes. Cough, cough. State Uncle Zheng naturally wouldn't be so foolish as to directly discuss that big deal with the cult master in front of these pretty girls. Instead, he took out a letter and pushed it in front of the cult master. Cult master, you'll know once you see the letter. Today we'll only talk about the wind and moon. Don't talk about anything else. State Uncle Zheng laughed heartily after he finished speaking, but a sinister glint flashed through his eyes. Their Zheng family had been forced to such a state by Prince Mo. If they didn't wait for an opportunity to counterattack, then they really wouldn't have a chance to make a comeback. The cult master smiled faintly, and a trace of coldness flashed through his black eyes. He nodded and said, "Fine. Then let's just talk about the wind and moon." Ah, cult master is truly a wonderful person. Jing Chao guffawed. Behind him, the group of fat former officials were also somewhat muddle-headed from eating and drinking. Each of them hugged the girls in their arms and laughed loudly. The former Minister of Works stammered, I was also the Minister of Works back then. If it weren't for that person wanted to cover the sky with one hand and pull his own people up the ranks, this official wouldn't have ended up like this. I was sent to Taichung Temple to be a small temple's deputy. Burp. Ah. Lord Huang, you drank too much. I didn't drink too much. The former Minister of Works, Lord Huang, angrily flung his sleeves and stroked the girl's face back and forth with his fat palm, looking intoxicated. Rura, if it weren't for that good-for-nothing youngest brother of mine, that person had something on him. How could I be chased down from that position? Burp. Everyone urged Lord Huang to drink more. The former Minister of Works, Sir Huang, thought of his past glory, and compared it to today. He became even more worried. Sect leader, if this succeeds. Lord Huang patted his chest and shouted, "Count me in. The reward will definitely not be small." Oh my. Dear esteemed guests. Our Jade Hue House's top hostess, Miss Ran, has come to meet everyone. Second manager Chi, who was squinting his eyes, was originally hugging and teasing an 18 or 19-year-old girl in his arms. When he heard the brothel keeper's call, he quickly turned around to take a look. When he saw Zhao Qiran's thin makeup and picturesque appearance, his soul immediately flew out of his body and his mouth began to salivate. Lord Huang and the others also stood up and surrounded her like a swarm of flies. Our Miss Ran is here. Long time no see, miss, you're still as graceful as ever. Ah. As Lord Huang spoke, he reached out to hug Miss Ran. The brothel keeper hastily stepped forward to separate Lord Huang from her and chuckled mischievously. Dear guests, our Miss Ran only sells her skills and not her body. How about having her play the zither and dance for everyone to liven up the mood? Zheng Chao's face darkened, and he threw his cup on the table with a bang. Chapter 1070. You don't know how to appreciate favors. This is His Excellency Cult Master. Why don't you hurry over and properly serve him? Zheng Chao scolded with a cold expression, then turned to look at the cult master with an obsequious smile. Please don't take offense, cult master. The cult master absent-mindedly looked up at Miss Ran, who was standing at the door. Unlike the other gorgeously dressed women in this building, this 18 or 19-year-old girl was dressed neatly and plainly. She was wrapped in a light-colored robe, unlike the other girls who revealed their too slender and fair thighs. Miss Ran was wrapped up very tightly. Her brows and eyes actually couldn't be considered very good-looking, but the combination of her facial features gave her an attractive charm. This Miss Ran had a different kind of charm and pride. The procuress's expression stiffened slightly, and then she said to everyone with an obsequious smile, "Honored guests. Our Jade Hue Parlor's Miss Ran isn't like the other girls in this building. Miss Ran is just like her name, clean and spotless. She can play the zither and sing, but if it's anything else..." Clang. Zheng Chao angrily slapped the wine pot to the ground and stood up. He pointed at the procuress and cursed, "How can you be so tactless, procuress? It's fine if you shirk your duties to us normally. But today you dare to be so impudent in front of the cult master? You really don't want to live anymore, do you? She's just a girl in this building, yet she dares to be so pretentious?" Sir Huang belched and jeered. The procuress was so frightened that her face drained of color. She was just a normal person. Although she was accustomed to grand occasions, State Uncle Zheng's accumulated power in the past was too great. Now that he was angry, the procuress was a bit fearful. However, Zhao Qiran said indifferently, "Withdraw first. I'll deal with this." The procuress immediately nodded. Before leaving, she glanced at Zhao Qiran rather worriedly, then hurried to the rear courtyard after exiting the private room. The cult master looked up and paused for a moment at her departing figure. Then he retracted his gaze and glanced at Zhao Qiran. Seeing this girl's stiff body and pursed lips, he couldn't help but find it amusing. He flicked his sleeve lightly and said in a wanton and flirtatious manner, "Pour wine." Zhao Qiran's body stiffened slightly. She sat down next to the cult master and obeyed his orders. She poured a cup of wine for him, but her eyes never strayed and she didn't move. Everyone else looked at her in astonishment. Sir Huang, who was hugging a little flower and fondling her up and down, turned around to take a look. He couldn't help but sneer, "Cult master actually likes this kind of woman? I think she's not as good as the one I'm carrying." Look at him, he was dull and emotionless. "Look at how good this green leaf beside me is. She's obedient, well-behaved, and sensible. When she serves people, she knows how to do things." The woman called Lu Yi glanced somewhat awkwardly at Miss Ran. Her status couldn't even compare to a single strand of Miss Ran's hair. It was no wonder that Miss Ran's expression was slightly unsightly at this moment. The cult master chuckled. After 3 rounds of wine he stood up. "This venerable one and Ran will be leaving first." Everyone immediately exchanged a "we all understand" look and winked at each other before chuckling vulgarly. All right. Miss Ran, you'd best obediently serve our venerable cult master. If there's any mishap, be careful of your delicate skin and tender flesh." Zhao Qiran's body was completely stiff. The cult master was amused. Without saying anything else, he directly pulled Miss Ran away. Chapter 1071. Zhao Qiran originally wanted to struggle, but the sect master spat out a burst of energy, and she immediately couldn't budge. She stiffly allowed the sect master to pull her away, unable to conceal the shock in her eyes. It was for no other reason than the sect master softly whispering in her ear, "This venerable one knows that you're a member of the Rakshasa ghost sect." Seeing Miss Ran stiffen, the sect master wickedly curled his lips and dragged the girl into the room, slamming the door with a bang. That door heavily slammed into Miss Ran's heart, causing her to be so shocked that she almost couldn't breathe. The man in front of her had an extremely shocking aura, causing her mind to waver for a moment. "Sit down and drink another cup with this venerable one. I believe that your sect master will arrive very soon." The sect master pressed the girl to sit down and unsealed her acupoint with one finger. He swirled the wine cup in his hand, his tone not allowing her to refuse. Don't worry. As long as you cooperate well, this venerable one won't make things difficult for you." The sect master's lips curled slightly, and he indifferently drank a cup before leisurely saying, "Hey, put away that dagger in your sleeve. Be careful not to stupidly cut yourself. If this venerable one wanted you, do you think you can do anything to this venerable one with that lousy dagger in your hand?" The sect master glanced at her with a spurious smile. Zhao Qiran blinked and looked at him in astonishment. He knew. He actually knew everything? Then what do you want to do?" The sect master suddenly reached out, and a suction force pulled her into his embrace, causing her to sit on his lap. "I heard that you, the top hostess of Jade Hue Parlor, have all the men in the capital scrambling after you like a flock of ducks." His thin and soft sleeve brushed past her small face, and a faint smile tugged at his lips. "You've seen so many men, so you're the most qualified to speak. This venerable one asks you, do you think this venerable one stinks?" Zhao Qiran. Why was she suddenly speechless? This esteemed sect master, what kind of damned question was this? The sect master's beautiful eyes narrowed in melancholy, and his thin lips pursed as he looked at Miss Zhao and asked, I'll ask you again. When this venerable one hugs you, do you feel any discomfort? Miss Zhao looked at him with a dumbfounded expression. Why is it that this sect master, who looks so elegant and talented, seems to have some problems with his brain? Why didn't you answer when I asked you a question? The hierarch's face turned cold, and the smile on his face turned cold in an instant. Zhao Qiran was flabbergasted by his quick change in attitude. It's not without a sense of comfort, Zhao Qiran stammered in reply. The sect leader was furious. With a flick of his sleeve, he threw her to the ground and stood up abruptly. Liar. Zhao Qiran. If you still don't speak the truth, this seat will tear down your jade color house. Zhao Qiran, what should I say? Isn't this sect leader a bit too temperamental? Indeed, it's not very comfortable. Zhao Qiran could only agree with him. The cult master's brows relaxed and he immediately smiled. He stretched out his long arms and happily picked Miss Ran up from the ground. Once again he held her in his arms like a baby. He stroked the back of her head and asked, "Is this comfortable?" Zhao Qiran's body stiffened, her head wooden as she shook her head. This cult master seemed to be a sick person. You women always like to call stinky men stinky men. Could it be that this venerable one really stinks? Chapter 1072. Zhao Qiran. What should she say? If she denied it, perhaps this esteemed cult master would turn his back on her like a madman. Thus, Zhao Qiran nodded reluctantly. The cult master immediately sighed. No wonder she doesn't like me. Tell me, this cult master baths twice a day, and even my clothes have incense on them. How can I still stink? Forgive me for not answering this question of yours. Miss Ran tightly pursed her lips and simply didn't say a word. In reality, she only smelled a faint fragrance on this cult master's body and didn't have any unpleasant odor. Moreover, when this cult master hugged her, to be honest, she actually didn't feel any revulsion. His hug was natural like water and didn't seem vulgar at all. It really couldn't be said to be uncomfortable. How do you women like to be hugged? Horizontally or vertically? The cult master humbly asked for advice. Zhao Qiran. Princess, why haven't you come to rescue this subordinate? Knock knock. Two soft sounds came from the window and a low voice softly said, Cult master, the Raksha princess is still several kilometers away from here. She'll probably arrive in less than 3 minutes. Upon hearing this, the cult master immediately pushed Zhao Qiran away from his lap and turned back to give him a charming smile. This cult master will seek your advice next time. I'll take my leave first today. With that, he nimbly flipped out of the window. Like a wisp of flowing cloud, his figure instantly vanished without a trace. Bam! The door to the room was forcefully kicked open by a beautiful woman. A pair of beautiful eyes darted back and forth, and the Raksha princess sweetly called out with her innate baby voice, Ding Lang. Then she looked dumbfoundedly at Zhao Qiran, who sat paralyzed on the ground and couldn't move at all. Why is it only you? Where did Ding Lang go? As she spoke, mystic chi shot out from her fingertip and suddenly hit Zhao Qiran's sealed acupoint. Zhao Qiran heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly stood up to bow. Princess Cult Master left just now. Princess Raksha gritted her teeth and stomped her feet. She turned around and chased after Ding Yun, shouting, Ding Yun, you little bastard, let's see where you can run to. Cult Master Ding, who was already far away, couldn't help but tremble when he heard Princess Luosha's shout. He hurriedly ran even faster. It wasn't until he had run quite a distance that he slowed down and let out a sigh of relief. That was close. He was so close to being caught by that crazy woman. Sect Master, this subordinate has something to report. Left Protector, if you have something to say, just say it. The sect leader, who had just recovered from the shock, turned his head and glanced at the man who had followed him like a shadow. The Holy Maiden left the headquarters several days ago and headed for the Mystic Beast Forest. At this moment, she should be heading to the forest secret realm together with the elites of each nation to gain experience. The sect master was slightly taken aback but then nodded. Sikong Fuling has always been a mischievous person. Why would she want to go to the forest mystic realm this time and do such a thankless task? The secret treasures and spirit weapons in the Mystic Beast Forest mystic realm had always been a legend. He didn't believe that Sikong Fuling, with her lazy personality, would listen to everyone's rumors and go to the mystic realm to suffer. It's said that that person is also in the group. Who? A foreboding feeling suddenly flashed through the sect master's mind. Prince Mo's consort. A trace of anger flitted across the sect master's picturesque features. Why should she meddle in my affairs? Chapter 1073. The left protector was silent. He understood very well that it was best not to speak when this person was in a fit of anger. Otherwise, the more he spoke, the angrier he got, and the more perverted he would do something. It was best to let him calm down silently. How many days has it been since you left? Cult Master Ding asked him with an ugly expression. 4 or 5 days, the left protector answered briefly. Suddenly, the cult master's figure flashed, and his slender body flashed up a tree. In the time it took to take a breath, a beautiful woman wearing revealing clothes suddenly flashed in front of him and pressed a hand tightly on his shoulder. The left protector felt his chest tighten, but he didn't say anything. He only looked at the newcomer in silence. He, big brother left protector. The left protector. This old witch was probably a bit old to be his mother. Hearing her call him big brother left protector or something, he felt goosebumps all over his body. Okay? Where's your esteemed cult master? The Raksha princess pouted her bright red lips and looked at the left protector with misty eyes. Her soft hands seemed to be kneading and squeezing his shoulders. The left protector suddenly felt that at this moment, he was like a pig waiting to be sold at a high price. The owner was testing whether or not this pig was fat enough to be sold. His esteemed cult master actually didn't say anything and directly left his beautiful subordinate behind to climb up a tree. He really wanted to betray him. Big brother Bashan. We haven't seen each other for quite a while. The Raksha princess' delicate hands were like snakes as they stroked down the left protector's square face. She stroked all the way to his neck and gently rubbed his protruding Adam's apple back and forth. The left protector Bashan's hair stood on end. Where's your esteemed cult master? The Raksha princess giggled as her soft hands slid down the left protector's stiff chest. She looked like she was going to take advantage of the left protector's entire body. The left protector really wanted to cry, but men don't easily shed tears. He forcibly held them back. Big brother Bashan, if you don't tell me the truth, I'll do you on the spot. I won't be gentle when I'm angry. The Raksha princess said with a serious expression. Cult Master Ding, who was hiding in the dense foliage of the tree, did not dare to move. He hid there and hid his aura so Princess Luosha couldn't sense him. If he made a move, the consequences would be unimaginable. What a terrifying woman. He would rather die than go down to see this old woman. Bashan, sacrificing your ego to complete my greater ego, your death will be worth it. Left guardian Bashan's eyes were filled with tears, and his heart was bleeding that he watched as the Luosha princess pushed him to the ground. His clothes were ripped apart with a light swipe of the Luosha princess' finger. The chastity that he had reserved for the right protector was about to be lost. Sob, sob, sob. Suddenly, a loud bang was heard, and a thick layer of white fog filled the air under the tree. The left protector suddenly felt his body lighten, and someone picked him up and ran away. Flustered and exasperated, Princess Raksha only managed to grab half of Cult Master Ding's lapel. When she rushed out of the thick white fog, how could she still see Cult Master Ding? Ding Yun, you little brat. Let's see where you can run to. The Raksha princess rubbed her slender fingers and snorted angrily. When I catch you, I'll torture you to death in 360 different ways. Chapter 1074. Princess. A soft, stammering voice was heard. Are we going back now? No. The Raksha princess looked like she was going to fight Cult Master Ding to the end. How's the investigation going? This subordinate found out that the Holy Maiden left the demonic cult's headquarters several days ago and headed for the Mystic Beast Forest. This little bitch must have bewitched brother Cult Master, so he won't accept my goodwill no matter what. The Raksha princess angrily said, let's go to the Mystic Beast Forest to meet this little bitch. That female subordinate speechlessly glanced at the Raksha princess before silently following her. In reality, the princess had pursued Cult Master Ding for so many days, but when had Cult Master Ding ever cared about her? He was clearly rejecting her. The Raksha princess's exquisite face was taut as she suddenly asked, how many days has it been since my Shi'er left? The female subordinate hastily replied, ever since you sent her to Balon City to search for a spirit weapon, she hasn't returned. It's been a very, very long time. The Raksha princess indignantly flung her sleeves. Despicable. Everything is against me. The female subordinate didn't dare utter another word and hastily left with her. Mylian's section break. After exiting the Honghai Temple, a group of low-key carriages headed for the palace. Emolian leaned against the brocade next to the window and gently rubbed her head with one hand. The restoration and reconstruction of Nimpan Tower was going smoothly. According to the normal speed, it would probably be completed within a year. Without these vexing matters he also felt much more relaxed. Once his little crown princess returned safely, he could happily consummate the wedding. When he thought of this, Prince Mo's lips curled up, and a faint smile appeared on his face. I wonder if this little fellow is having fun in the mystic realm? Whoosh! A light sound rang out. Prince Mo narrowed his eyes and turned his head to the side, only to see a short arrow abruptly pierce through the thick curtain and nail itself to the window frame. The arrow's tail quivered, and there was even a piece of bright yellow silk cloth wrapped around the arrowhead. Who goes there? The guards outside shouted angrily and drew their swords. Hui Feng impatiently lifted the curtain and called out, "Your Highness." "I'm fine." Prince Mo shook his head calmly. Hui Feng quickly bowed and boarded the carriage. He took out the bright yellow silk cloth that Prince Mo had tied to the window lattice and handed it to the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince only glanced at it. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the signature on the silk cloth, "Ding Ting Ding." Then his face suddenly turned cold. Without saying a word, he got out of the carriage and hurriedly rushed in a certain direction. "Your Highness." Hui Feng and the others were alarmed, and they hastily followed after him. The group of people had just turned the corner when they saw more than a dozen men wearing ferocious-looking masks pouncing on them. The two sides started to fight on the spot. The Crown Prince's figure floated to an arch bridge like a wisp of smoke. This small stone arch bridge had a very steep slope, and a tall figure in a bewitching purple stood in the center of the slope. Ding Ting Ding. Emolienne gazed icily at the figure in front of her. "It's me." That person turned around, revealing a smiling face that resembled the Maitreya Buddha. He looked benevolent and exceptionally amiable. However, this smiling face truly didn't match the murderous aura emanating from his body in the slightest. Emolienne naturally wouldn't foolishly believe that this appearance was Ding Ting Ding's original appearance. "You came to throw away your life." Crown Prince Mo sneered, his extremely frigid gaze landing on the other party. Chapter 1075. He hadn't even had the time to find trouble with this person, and this person had delivered himself to his doorstep. If this wasn't seeking death, then what was? It's not certain who will die yet. Ding Ting Ding extended a slender, white finger and shook it forcefully in the air. His gaze circled back and forth on his body, tisk tisk. He lightly laughed. A trace of cold mockery slid across the man's lips, slowly but clearly enunciating each word, "Prince Mo. This lord has received a valuable gift from others, so this lord will naturally keep his promise. This lord will take your precious life." Emolienne couldn't help but sneer, 5 clusters of flames dancing between her raised fingers. Ding Ting Ding's laughter was low and deep, and he suddenly flung out a wriggling little snake with a wave of his hand. Unfortunately, before it could fly in front of Emolienne, it was burned to ashes by a cluster of flames. "If I beat you, how about you give me this beautiful skin on your body?" Ding Ting Ding blinked, with a humble and pleading appearance. "If I use your skin to make a beauty drum and give it to the little girl, she'll definitely be very happy." Emolienne couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this person. Such a despicable move. Did he think that a few threatening words would be able to shake her heart that was as hard as iron? Too laughable. "You should first think about whether you'll have another chance to live if you lose to me." A streak of fire suddenly descended, and the two people flew forward. The slender, jet-black raven moon sword clashed with a sparkling green longsword. That sword was actually made of vines, but it was abnormally sturdy. A great spirit master who comprehended the wood spirit? She really underestimated this little thief. Emolienne's eyes flashed slightly, and the fire spirit covered the raven moon sword, and a terrifying spirit energy directly pounced on the other party. Chi! The red flames instantly turned purple, enveloping the green vine sword in Ding Ting Ding's hand, and instantly burning it to ashes. What a powerful fire spirit. Is it a 9th level spirit fire? Ding Ting Ding blinked and smiled, and 5 or 6 vines suddenly drilled out of his sleeves, whipping straight towards the ground. Emolienne shifted her feet and quickly leaped up to avoid the vines that were thrown at her. When the purple flames landed on the snake-like vines, they were instantly burned to ashes. As expected, an 8th stage wood spirit against a 9th stage spirit fire is still too forceful. Then, try my spiritual weapon. Ding Ting Ding mumbled to himself. Try my earth treasure bell of heaven and earth. This is a spiritual artifact that has been forcibly sealed to the 15th level. It's not just a spiritual artifact. Ding Ting Ding called out somewhat childishly, "Take this." In the blink of an eye, a gigantic black bell jumped out from his conscious and headed straight for Emolien to envelop him. If he was caught by this bell, he was afraid that he would really have to give up his life here. Emolien's lips curled into a sneer as she flicked her sleeve. The other party was coming at them menacingly, so how could they not accept the challenge? No matter what, they couldn't lose to this little thief. Suddenly, his figure flashed, and when he appeared again, he was already in front of the earth treasure bell of heaven and earth. With extremely fast hand speed, he made a few complicated hand seals that couldn't be seen clearly by the naked eye. A pitch-black lotus with a faint light suddenly appeared in his hand. It looked as if it was as light as a feather, completely unable to withstand a single blow. In reality, when it collided with the ferocious earth treasure bell of heaven and earth, that earth treasure bell of heaven and earth was actually sent flying back several meters by the impact of the black lotus, and it began to spin in midair. Chapter 1076. Boom. The pitch-black lotus flower actually exploded in an instant, producing a huge burst of energy that instantly sent the heaven-earth bell flying. Ding Ting-Ding's expression didn't change, but he was shocked on the inside. He reached out to recall the bell and sized up Emolien with a smile on his face. Seems a bit interesting. Prince Imo, even with his eyesight, he actually couldn't recognize what kind of technique Prince Mo's hand seal was. Emolien didn't say a word. She directly pinched out several ink-colored lotus flowers and threw them at Ding Ting-Ding. He had only comprehended the second realm of the Death Lotus Seal's inheritance, but it was more than enough to deal with a little mystic cultivator whose cultivation was sealed at level 15. Are you prepared to die? Thief Sage Ding Ting-Ding. Emolien pursed her thin lips and pounced forward, her slender fingers grabbing the other party's arm. The purple flames burning on her fingers were about to burn through Ding Ting-Ding's arm. Yet he suddenly opened his mouth. After fusing with the demonic beast Fire Qilin Fang's snake, the poison had long become one with his body. At this moment he spat out a mouthful of mist. If it were anyone else, they would definitely be caught off guard and fall for it. Unfortunately, Emolien had long been on guard against him, and he was an apothecary who could resolve all kinds of abnormal conditions in the body. Thus, this kind of Fire Qilin Fang snake's poison was naturally completely useless against him. At this moment, a black lotus imprint appeared on Emolien's palm. She flew up and took advantage of Ding Ting-Ding's momentary lapse of confusion to press her palm, which contained a huge amount of mystic energy, on Ding Ting-Ding's chest with a bang. However, he suddenly felt a slight stabbing pain in his palm and abruptly pulled it back. Cough. Ding Ting-Ding abruptly took a step back, and a trace of blood inevitably slid down from the corner of his mouth. He suddenly laughed hysterically. Emolien, oh Emolien. Do you think you've won? Take a look at your hand, okay? Emolien looked down at her palm expressionlessly. There was a small pinhole in the center of her palm, and a drop of blood had already formed. Ding Ting-Ding smugly raised his head and laughed. I purposely placed a poison needle here. You've been fooled this time. Prince Imo, you're about to die. Ah. My beauty skin is finally here. Emolien didn't make a sound. She only took advantage of the moment when Ding Ting-Ding raised his head and laughed to leap into the air like a ghost. With a grab and press, she locked Ding Ting-Ding's shoulder. Ding Ting-Ding's pitch-black eyes flashed with a dark light. Without thinking, a green vine sword formed in his hand and viciously stabbed towards Prince Mo's heart. This fast, vicious, and accurate sword strike at close range was naturally blocked by Prince Mo's full-body spiritual armor. A close-range lotus seal once again slammed into Ding Ting-Ding's chest. The lotus seal even exploded several times on his body. In the blink of an eye, half of the bridge pier was blasted into smithereens. Ding Ting-Ding glanced at him in astonishment before falling down along with the shattered pier. You seem to be very surprised. Prince Imo had clearly been pierced by the poison needle in his chest earlier, so why was he completely fine and didn't have any reaction at all? Emolien lowered her head to glance at the small red dot in her palm. Her body suddenly swayed and she coughed softly. Hui Feng and the others quickly rushed to her side and shouted with rapt attention, Your Highness. Emolien waved her hand to stop him from speaking. Return to the Eastern Palace immediately. An 8th layer with Spirit Great Spiritual Master who had also fused with the power of evil beasts wasn't easy to deal with. Chapter 1077. Cult Master, how are you? The left protector, who was supporting the drenched man and walking briskly along the riverbank, exclaimed softly in shock. Cough, cough, cough. Although the cult master was in a sorry state, extreme joy floated between his brows. Ah. Cough, cough. The left protector hurriedly took out a medicinal pill and fed it to him. Cult Master, your heart was heavily injured by a dagger earlier, and it hasn't fully recovered during this period. Now your heart has been struck by Prince Mo's palm again and again. You had better take care of your body. Ah, cough, how much better do you think he is than me? The Cult Master smiled smugly. I merely received 2 palm strikes from him. It'll be fine as long as I shift the important organs in my body. He said indifferently, it's not like I'll die. He's different. He was poisoned by the devil grass and no one in the world can cure him, ha. Cough coffee. He's dead for sure. Right now he still doesn't know that he'll soon become a corpse, ha. After saying this, the Cult Master laughed crazily again until he spat out a mouthful of blood before stopping. Cult Master? The left protector turned pale with fright as he supported his worrisome master, somewhat blaming him for not cherishing his body. The Cult Master's playfulness was his second nature, and his emotions were hard to discern. When had he ever seen someone injure him to this extent? How could he still laugh? Take me to the Mystic Beast Forest. He abruptly grabbed his wrist. The left protector's dog eyes widened in shock. Cult Master, why do you still want to go to the Mystic Beast Forest when you're injured like this? Shouldn't he immediately return to the headquarters to treat his injuries? Less nonsense, take me there. The Cult Master coughed up blood, and his body involuntarily pressed down on the left protector. The left protector looked down and saw that his master had fainted just like that. He couldn't help but be anxious and angry, but he didn't dare to go against his master's wishes. He could only find a place to treat his master's injuries before taking him to the Mystic Beast Forest. He thought, how did I end up with a master like you? Idiot ding ting ding. After 7 days and 6 nights of killing profound beasts, he was endlessly absorbing the boundless profound energy in this place. Arbor frantically assimilated the essence earth in his body and smoothly advanced a level without any mishaps, stepping into the ranks of level 13 mystic cultivators. Looking inside, he found that less than a third of the life essence earth was left after the rapid fusion. It seemed that the estimated fusion time would be much faster. She suddenly opened her eyes, her heart beating like a drum for no reason, and her mind was in a strange panic. She hurriedly reached out to soothe her noisy chest and looked up at the blue sky in the mystic realm with a puzzled expression. What's going on? For a moment he felt very flustered. Before she could think about it, she heard a series of heavy footsteps. He didn't even need to look to know that it was that damn giant ape senior. The giant ape arrived in front of her and suddenly stretched out its hairy arms, lifting her up as usual. He did not allow her to resist at all. Stomp, stomp, stomp. His fat and thick feet stepped on the soft soil as he carried her back to the stone tablet. Xiao Qiao. When Sixth Zheng saw her appear, he couldn't help but sigh in relief. In truth, they had already been released from the sealed space 2 days ago, but Sixth Zheng had not seen Arbor's figure the entire time, so he was secretly anxious. Chapter 1078. Seeing that she was safe and sound this time, he relaxed. Qin Susu also nodded slightly at Arbor. This mystic realm was rather strange. When she was first isolated in that damn sealed space, she was almost torn to shreds by the swarms of mystic beasts. When she recalled how the second young master had told her to protect Miss Qiao at all costs after entering the mystic realm, she couldn't help but blush. It seemed like there was nothing she could do to help. Even now, she only suspected that the 10,000-year Xuanji core was inside the small house, but her group couldn't pass through no matter what. Arbor had been carried all the way here by the giant ape. The colossal ape's arm was as thick as 7 or 8 of her thighs. The scene of being carried all the way here was really hard to describe in a few words. Today was the 8th day since they entered the mystic realm. Everyone had already completed the first round of the Mystic Beast Mystic Realm special training. According to the stone tablet, those who completed the first round of training only needed to advance by 1 level within 10 days to be able to head to the small house in the forest and pay their respects to Senior Xuanji. However, when they were transported out 2 days ago, Little Sixth Zheng, Qin Susu, Bailey Wu, and Bailey Jin all felt that they had reached the critical point of advancing, but they still hadn't advanced after 2 days. At this time they all looked at Arbor. When they saw it, their eyes immediately widened in shock. She had advanced. Because Arbor had an aura-concealing talisman on her, her cultivation had been forcibly deducted by 5 levels. Now, everyone saw that the little girl in front of them was at the 8th level of the mystic realm. Miss Qiao had always been at the 7th level of cultivation, although her cultivation wasn't quite in line with her strength. Most people attributed this inconsistency to Miss Qiao being a great talisman master. Prince Mo's consort had actually advanced. This meant that she could head to the small house before everyone else. Wei Nanshu looked gloomily at Arbor, his heart filled with indignation. When he thought of how Arbor would be the first to head to the small house to choose a secret treasure, his heart felt like thousands of ants were crawling and rolling. It was extremely unbearable. Prince Mo's consort would definitely be the first to choose the 10,000-year Xuanji core. Hee, senior giant ape, isn't this a little unfair? The giggling Sikong Fuling appeared in front of the giant ape in a flash. The little girl's cultivation is at the 7th level. It's much easier for her to advance to the 8th level than most of us. After all, everyone knew that the higher one's cultivation level was, the harder it was to advance. The amount of profound energy needed to advance from the 7th level to the 8th level and the amount of profound energy needed to advance from the 12th level to the 13th level could be said to be the difference between heaven and earth. The difference between a canal and the sea. When everyone heard this, their pupils constricted slightly. A level 12 mystic cultivator. The demonic cult's holy maiden was already a level 12 mystic cultivator at such a young age. Her talent was simply terrifying to the extreme. Without a doubt, the holy maiden's cultivation was the highest among them. Roar, roar. The giant ape was very human-like and roared at her twice, as if it was berating her to quickly retreat. Humph. The saintess of the demonic cult, Sikong Fuling, instantly turned hostile. She reached out and grabbed in Arbor's direction. If this young lady slaughters this little girl right now, doesn't that mean that all the rankings will have to be redone? Wei Nanshu, Ying Jian, and the others stood on the sidelines to watch, unable to conceal the schadenfreude in their eyes. It couldn't be any better that the holy maiden was willing to make a move. If a level 12 mystic cultivator wanted to kill a level 8 mystic cultivator, it would be a matter of minutes. Chapter 1079. Arbor was completely expressionless, as if completely unsurprised that this saint of the demonic cult would suddenly attack her. After throwing out a defensive talisman to block the saint's claw, Arbor's figure flickered, and she had already floated behind the giant ape. Roar! Sure enough, the giant ape senior suddenly attacked in the next second. Its plump palm flung out and mercilessly struck the saint of the demonic cult, Sikong Fuling's face, as if it was going to flatten her small face with one slap. The saint dodged slightly to the left. Although she dodged quickly enough, she couldn't match the giant ape's agility. It rushed forward and once again attacked the saint's small face with its fan-like palm. Sikong Fuling's face darkened and she cursed, "Damn it. This damn giant ape was targeting her face with every move. Could it be that it hadn't heard of not hitting people's faces when hitting them?" Xiao Mu stood leisurely to the side as she calmly watched this saint of the demonic cult fend off the giant ape's powerful attacks with great difficulty. After the giant ape's several slaps missed the saint's face, it angrily roared at the sky. Eastern Ying Kingdom's eldest crown prince, Ying Jian, who was originally standing on the side to watch the show, was caught off guard by this sound and inexplicably spat out a mouthful of blood. What a powerful sound wave technique. This giant ape could actually use its roar to injure people, so its strength was clearly extraordinary. At this time, the giant ape had already been provoked by the saint of the demonic cult, Sikong Fuling, who was as slippery as a loach. It stayed in this mystic energy-dense mystic realm all year round, so its martial strength was comparable to a peak level 15 mystic cultivator. The more they exchanged blows, the more apprehensive Sikong Fuling became. At the same time, she was well aware that the reason she was able to smoothly enter the mystic realm in the beginning was that this giant ape had not used its full strength. Taking a deep breath, Sikong Fuling suddenly summoned her mystic beast, four-winged jade-eyed tiger. The moment that mystic beast landed, it roared and fearlessly pounced at the giant ape to bite it. The giant ape roared angrily a few times and stomped on the ground. Its body jumped up and down, nimbly dodging the four-winged jade-eyed tiger's attack. It then slapped the four-winged jade-eyed tiger's face. The four-winged jade-eyed tiger wasn't as lucky as its master. This slap just happened to land on its head, causing it to stagger and shake its head dizzily. Just as Sikong Fuling turned to check on the four-winged jade-eyed tiger, Arbor suddenly moved. Her agile figure swayed, and dozens of icicles flashing with a cold white light suddenly shot toward Sikong Fuling's back. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Sikong Fuling immediately sensed the approaching danger and rolled on the ground as she dodged several icicles. However, in the next second he was shocked by Arbor, who suddenly appeared in front of him. The startled swan dagger brushed past the demonic saintess' left cheek. If she hadn't rolled away to avoid it, the startled swan dagger would have slit her throat. The little girl was too ruthless and didn't leave any leeway. The demonic saintess broke out in a cold sweat, but when she turned to look at Arbor, she laughed coquettishly. What a fast dagger. Without a word, Arbor lightly tapped the ground with the tip of its foot and flew into the air. With another flash, the hundreds of icicles in its hand rapidly streaked across the deathly still air. TSK 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 TSK. The saintess dodged several times in a row, anger flashing through her still eyes as she activated her defensive weapon to block. What a fellow. A little level 8 Mystic Cultivator forced a level 12 Mystic Cultivator to retreat without using a talisman. Chapter 1080. With several sizzling sounds, the icicles rained down and continuously struck Seekong Fulling's defensive barrier. The defensive artifact could still block a dozen or so fierce attacks, but which defensive artifact could withstand 100 or so fierce attacks? Seekong Fulling's expression darkened. She slightly relaxed her mystic energy, and the entire defensive barrier was broken open by the icicles with a bam. Bam bam bam. Everyone speechlessly turned their heads to look, only to see Senior Giant Ape grinning widely and happily clapping his large furry palms. His heart was probably biased to God knows where. They originally found it very strange that Senior Giant Ape's enthusiasm for Miss Chiao was completely different from theirs. Could this be a natural affinity for each other? Cough cough cough. After the defensive barrier was broken, Seekong Fulling dodged a row of icicles with lightning-like speed. But she was still unavoidably hit in the thigh and elbow by several icicles. Streaks of red abrasions appeared especially conspicuous on her fair skin. Seekong Fulling's gaze had already turned completely cold and she looked up at Arbor. I originally thought that you were a pretty good girl, but who knew that you also know how to sneak attack from behind? Arbor blinked but did not speak. He flipped his hand and shot a sharp aqua-colored blade that brushed past Seekong Fulling's scalp, who had suddenly fallen backward. Swish swish. The flowing water arrow was impossible to guard against. Meanwhile, Ing Jian and the others who were watching from the side were already stupefied by this scene. How could a little level 8 Mystic Cultivator now beat up a level 12 Mystic Cultivator? Could it be that Miss Chiao secretly used a talisman without their knowledge? This was too shocking. A fervent glint flashed through Wei Nanshu's eyes. No wonder everyone said that great talisman masters had exceedingly formidable means. It looked like this was indeed the case. You probably used some magic treasure to conceal your cultivation realm. At this time, the holy maiden finally understood. She wasn't stupid. After fighting until now, if she still didn't know that Arbor wasn't some level 8 mystic cultivator, then she really could buy a piece of tofu and kill herself. Arbor didn't pay any attention to her. He only glanced at her from the corner of his eyes before looking back at the giant ape. The giant ape seemed to be very happy with her victory. It walked in front of her and stretched out its furry gray arm to grab her. He turned around and left the crowd, minding his own business. A dim light flickered in Wei Nanshu's eyes. His heart was filled with unspeakable jealousy and hatred, but he did not dare to make a move. After all, even Seekong Fulling was unable to gain an advantage over the giant ape, and Arbor's savagery had already left a very deep impression in his heart. With his intelligence and wisdom, it was naturally impossible for him to pick a time like this to stand out. Xiaomi, on the other hand, jumped up happily. You're going to the little hut in the forest to pay your respects to Senior Xuanji. That's great. Sis, you're amazing. The Aikido tribe's Akir involuntarily pursed her lips and sneered, It's not like you're going to the hut yourself. What are you so happy about? Xiaomi harumphed and glanced at her haughtily. What do you know? How can a brainless woman with big breasts like you, who pounces forward at the sight of men, possibly understand the precious sisterhood between us? Akir's face alternated between green and white at Xiaomi's blunt words. She twisted her body and stomped her feet. She hugged Ali's arm and called out delicately, Ali, look at her. Chapter 1081. Ali glanced at Xiaomi with a gloomy expression. He was also very dissatisfied with Xiaomi's tone and attitude. It was as if aside from Arbor, no one else was worth anything in her eyes. It was a little infuriating. Xiaomi shrugged and retracted her gaze. Then she walked to the side with Gong Sunlai and sat down. She closed her eyes and continued to cultivate. In the past 2 days, the mystic energy in the entire Mystic Beast secret realm had thinned considerably. However, they could instinctively feel that the waves of energy coming from the small house were continuously filling the void of mystic energy here. Such a powerful object it had to be. the 10,000-year-old Xuanji core. On the other side, Arbor was carried by the giant ape's arm the entire way. She watched speechlessly as the ape moved and leaped through the lush green forest and quickly arrived in front of a small house. This small house had red walls and black tiles. There was a red copper bell hanging from the door. The crisp tinkling of the bell could be heard from afar. The giant ape put her down and gently poked Arbor's shoulder with its finger. Xiaomu turned to look at it and said with a nod, "I can go in, but next time, you can't always carry me back and forth." She wasn't a little doll. What was with her being carried around all the time? She was so shameless that the giant ape grinned at her. This big guy had been in the secret realm for so many years that its intelligence had long since developed. Naturally, it could understand her words. Seeing it smile, Xiaomu took it as a sign that it agreed with her. She then nodded, put her two little claws behind her back, and walked towards the house with light steps. If she advanced within 10 days, she would receive the first opportunity to visit Senior Xuanji. No matter what, this was still a rare opportunity. Arbor began to look forward to it. What kind of good things would this Senior Xuanji give her? After all, she was the first person to successfully advance in the secret realm. It wouldn't do if Senior Xuanji didn't have anything to give her. Creak. The door to the small house was pushed open by her small hand. Looking inside the house, everything was arranged in an orderly manner, spotless. Although it looked like it had been a long time since someone had lived here, everything was properly tidied up. It was probably the work of the spiritual giant ape. Who knew how many years this fellow had been alone in the mystic realm? It only saw humans once every 10 years. Must have been very lonely. "Oh, my young child, you have come at last." A cheerful voice suddenly drilled into her ear. Xiaomu abruptly turned around and swept her gaze around the room, but she did not see anyone. "Stop looking. I'm right above you." Xiaomu abruptly raised her head, and what entered her sight was a pair of small feet in pink embroidered shoes dangling from the ceiling beam, swaying back and forth. Arbor. Do you feel that this old woman is different from the senior expert you imagined? Ah, that's right. Xuanji laughed heartily. I hate being restrained by the rules of the world the most. Acting according to one's nature is my motto. Arbor suddenly interrupted her. Let's get to the point. If you don't hurry up and say it, this virtual image of yours will completely disappear. Xuanji was silent for a moment, then suddenly laughed maniacally again. Good. My 200 years of waiting were not in vain. Little fellow, you are indeed an interesting child. Chapter 1082. Arbor was speechless as she looked at this senior expert. She couldn't help but mutter softly, "I don't even know if it's a trap. There are no secret treasures or spirit weapons at all." She was very clear that this senior sitting on the beam in front of her seemed to be talking to her, but in reality, it was just a remnant shadow. Everything she said was preset by herself. Don't think that because I came from the mountains I can be easily deceived. Little fellow, you're the first person in more than 200 years who can really advance in 10 days in this mystic realm. My bitter wait was not in vain. Arbor raised her eyebrows slightly. My mystic realm has been open for more than 200 years and has accepted at least 20 batches of people. If I'm not wrong, my encouragement reward Xuanji pill should have been used up in the last round of the mystic realm trial. Arbor's mouth twitched. If Wei Nanshu and the others heard this, they would probably vomit blood on the spot. Child. From today onwards, you're the second-generation leader of our Xuanji school. Wait. What second-generation leader of the Xuanji school? Then wouldn't the first generation be this senior Xuanji in front of her? After 300 years, she was only the second generation. What a poor sect this was. She didn't want to be some leader. She refused to accept this kind of job that forced a duck onto a perch. Don't think that being the leader of our Xuanji school is a laborious task. In fact, there are many benefits. Arbor curled her lips non-committally. Suddenly, the figure sitting on the beam landed lightly in front of her. In one hand, she held a fist-sized object that was as bright as a ruby. This is a 10,000-year-old Xuanji core. Senior Xuanji sighed quietly. It contains all my cultivation and strength in this life. You only need to absorb it into your dantian and slowly adjust to it. After a few decades, you'll be able to convert all my cultivation into your own. Arbor looked at the Xuanji core in that person's hand in shock. This was. Senior Xuanji had infused all of his power into it before he died. Similar to the pill inheritance she had received from teacher Long Chuyun, what she was about to receive now was a pure cultivation inheritance. Generally speaking, no one would even attempt to obtain such a cultivation inheritance. This was because it was extremely painful to inject all of one's power into the inheritance jade. The process was also extremely dangerous. There's a 90% chance that you'll die a horrible death before you've even succeeded. The remaining success rate was less than 10%, and it was possible to face all kinds of strange problems. Therefore, even when some of the elders in the family passed away, very few people would be stupid enough to choose to pass their cultivation to the younger generation. Because it was too difficult. Of course, if there really was a senior expert who carved his entire life's worth of cultivation into an inheritance jade stone and imparted it to you, that would be the rhythm of a meteoric rise. Think about it, one's life could be shortened by at least 60 to 100 years of struggle. A country bumpkin could immediately become a powerful expert. This inheritance red jade contains my entire life's worth of cultivation. Now the opportunity is in front of you. Little fellow. If you agree to become the second leader of my Xuanji school, kneel down and kowtow to me. Chapter 1083. Darling Qiao didn't make a sound for a long time as she stared suspiciously at Senior Xuanji, who had a faint smile on her lips. This was a soul that was more than 200 years old. Not only was it transparent, its face was already blurred. Senior Xuanji was obviously anxious when she didn't react after so long. She urged, "Why aren't you kneeling?" Okay, I'll tell you everything. Child, why are you so quick-witted? That's right. To accept my cultivation inheritance you have to agree to 3 conditions. As I said just now, becoming the second sect master of my Xuanji school is the first condition. This deceitful senior had probably set up this language trap 100 years ago so that the juniors who came would immediately be mesmerized by the Xuanji core and kneel down to accept her conditions. Then she would tell others that that was actually only the first condition and that there were still 2 conditions waiting for them. Arbor rolled her eyes and silently moved her feet to retreat. Senior Xuanji sighed and said, "The second condition is actually quite simple. When my Xuanji school was first established, there were 103 first-generation disciples. After 60 years of continuous hard work by this senior, the school has expanded to more than 5,000 people. To only accept 5,000 disciples after 60 years, it was probably just a third-rate school. The second task I want you to do is to find the 103 first-generation disciples and recruit them back into our Xuanji school." Arbor was speechless and complained softly, "There are so many people, where can I find the first-generation disciples? I know you'll definitely say that I'm fantasizing and unrealistic." Indeed. Arbor didn't want to scold her, but impatience was already showing in her eyes. She decided to run. She didn't want to take over this Xuanji school's mess. She had to become the sect master and find the first-generation disciples. How troublesome and annoying. I have the nameplates of the 103 first-generation disciples here. As long as you're within 1,000 feet of them, you'll be able to sense them. Arbor. A distance of 1,000 feet is actually not that far. You can fly there casually. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Arbor turned around and ran. He reached out and pulled on the door but it didn't budge. How could he let her out so easily? Arbor rolled up his sleeves, intending to give this senior Xuanji a good beating before asking her to let him out. Unexpectedly, when she turned around, she saw the senior looking at her with tears in her eyes. Although her face was blurred, she could tell that she was heartbroken. "Please don't despise our Xuanji sect. How am I asking for too much? I've given you my entire life's cultivation. And the 103 disciples of our Xuanji school will be your strongest backing in the future. The third condition is even simpler. I want you to find that old bastard Tianjizi's direct disciple and crush him with your strength. Just give him a slap in the face for me. I can even wake up laughing in the underworld." The more Qiaomu listened to this bizarre condition, the stranger it became. Qiaomu turned around and slammed on the door. Open the door. Giant ape, I know you're outside. Hurry up and open the door. Otherwise, she would tear down this lousy place. Just agree to my request, little fellow. Other than the Xuanji core, I can also give you all the entrance fees I've collected from the 20 batches of people who entered the mystic realm. Arbor, I'm actually speechless. Chapter 1084. So this person had cheated so many people of their spirit weapons and dharma treasures so that they could be offered to her as a tribute. She really had to thank her entire family. If Senior Xuanji had a physical body right now, she would definitely be hugging her leg and crying. Arbor turned her head and shot her a displeased glance, resolutely refusing to accept this 10,000-year-old Xuanji core. No problem, she already had the essence soil. She just needed to fuse it with her essence soil, and she would definitely be able to advance another level in a short period of time. That would be enough. As for Senior Xuanji's cultivation inheritance jade, she could be considered unlucky enough to enjoy it. With so many additional conditions, how could she be a patient person? No way, no way, no way. Our dear Qiao Mu shook her small hand vigorously and gave an affirmative answer. I won't accept it. She was about to turn and kick the door open when suddenly, a green vine shot out from her wrist and automatically coiled around the Xuanji core in Senior Xuanji's palm. Arbor couldn't stop it in time. She watched as that cheating tree directly sucked the Xuanji core into the mystic domain with a whoosh. She was shocked, stunned. Wasn't this crazy tree in seclusion? Could it be that the temptation of the Xuanji core was so great that it lured the little tree out of seclusion? Arbor hurriedly used her inner sight to take a look. She saw that after that cheating tree pulled the Xuanji core into the depths of the mystic domain, it covered the mystic domain with its roots. The entire tree emitted a pure and holy green glow as it pretended to be dead and motionless. It looked like it hadn't come out of seclusion at all. If the little tree ant was in front of her right now, she would definitely go up and beat it up without a second word. This darn fellow, how many times had it cheated her all these years? It was practically no trick count. Arbor nagged, but Senior Xuanji was overjoyed. She danced and shouted, Xuanji School's second-generation sect master. You're the second generation. Your whole family is second generation. Arbor turned around angrily and glared at this Senior Xuanji whose face was blurred out. Second sect leader, I'll leave the 3 missions to you. Do them well, I know you can do it. Senior Xuanji laughed and said, Oh right, if you meet the descendants of the merfolk race when you travel the pugilistic world in the future, help them if you can. This is already the 4th matter. Qiao Mu grumpily shouted at her. Although she knew that this guy couldn't hear her at all, her little heart still hurt from anger. Why are there so many problems? Just a slight effort? How could there be so many easy things in this world? It all depends on her mood. Qiao Mu turned her head proudly and kicked the door again. This time, the door opened as soon as he heard the sound. Qiao Mu ran out without looking back. She heard Senior Xuanji call out from behind her, Second sect master, remember the mission I gave you. Especially if you meet Tianjizi's junior disciples in the future, you must give them a good slap in the face. Arbor had already run far away, throwing the words of the Xuanji school's first-generation sect master to the back of her mind. She didn't know what kind of enmity this guy had with Senior Tianjizi, but he actually wanted her to slap Senior Tianjizi's disciple's face. And it had to be a good slap. What a baffling person. As a baby she really didn't understand the world of the senior experts. Arbor shook her head and ran out of the forest. Suddenly she heard a roar from behind. Chapter 1085. Turning around, she saw the giant ape grinning widely as it crawled over to her on all fours. It tilted its fat head and smiled charmingly naively. I'll walk by myself. Arbor said as she spread open her hand. The giant ape retracted its furry arm and glanced at her in embarrassment. Suddenly, it threw a pile of items in front of her. Arbor. What else could she say? Weren't these the entrance fees she had swindled from other people? The spirit stones that little Six Zhang had handed over. The short spiritual dagger that Wei Nanshu had handed over was embedded with a row of red, green, and blue gems. The demonic cult's holy maiden, Sikong Fuling, had given her 2 4-winged jade-eyed tiger canines. It really had everything that one could wish for. Qiao Mu rummaged through that trash pile, and took out Wei Nanshu's short spiritual blade and another high-level mystic weapon, bow and arrow. She placed them in her hands to cushion them. She hung the short dagger on her waist and carried the bow and arrow on her back. As for the rest of the pile, Arbor didn't refuse anything and put them all into her inner world. She really had to reluctantly accept a pile of scrap metal. The giant ape tilted its head and grinned happily as it watched her skillfully put away the items. It then turned around and led her through the valley, returning to the place where everyone was gathered in a short while. Seeing her return, Xiaomi happily went up to her. Younger sister, did you get your reward? Arbor showed her the bow and arrow on her back and the short dagger on her waist. Xiaomi was delighted to see them. Not bad, not bad. A mystic weapon and a spiritual weapon. This Senior Xuanji is really quite generous. Arbor inwardly disdained her. That person didn't give the reward for nothing. There were still 1, 2, 3 for lousy conditions. However, her expression didn't change and she still wore a stoic expression as she nodded reluctantly in agreement. At this time, Wei Nanshu suddenly shot in front of Arbor, his eyes staring intently at the short dagger hanging on her waist. Fuck, wasn't that the spiritual weapon he handed over to Senior Giant Ape? At this moment, it was actually hanging on the little girl's waist. The row of red, blue and green gemstones on the scabbard was custom-made by him. Every single one of them was extremely valuable. Naturally, he could recognize it at a glance. Wei Nanshu was fuming with anger. He pointed at the dagger hanging on Arbor's waist and angrily asked, "Why do you have this? What are you doing? Red eyebrows and green eyes staring at my sister. Are you tired of living?" Without another word, Xiaomi stepped forward and defended him. A grown man yelling at a little girl. "Isn't it very interesting? You, get out of the way." Wei Nanshu said angrily, "I gave this dagger to Senior Giant Ape 8 days ago. Why are you here now?" "A reward." Arbor looked at him as if he was an idiot. Wei Nanshu choked on her words and didn't know what to say. The dagger was indeed his, but he had already handed it over to the giant ape. Now that Senior Xuanji insisted on giving the dagger to Miss Qiao as a reward, what could he do? Other than forcibly suppressing his anger, he had no other choice. Dong 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 dong. The giant ape took heavy steps and threw a stone tablet in front of everyone. Written on it, "In this round of trial you will be thrown into the cold pond. As long as you can persist in the cold pond for 7 days, you will have the opportunity to meet Senior Xuanji. Work hard, do your best. Secret treasures and spiritual weapons are all waiting for you in front." Chapter 1086. Arbor looked at the stone tablet and silently rolled her eyes. This Senior Shenji was too good at tricking people. She didn't even have a small reward like the Xuanji pill, yet she was still using secret treasures to lure people. The giant ape impatiently reached out and patted the stone tablet. "Participants of the trial, please press your palm on the stone tablet and the timer will be activated immediately. Those who leave the water before the time is up will be deemed to have failed the trial." This time even the usually bold and reckless idiot Bai Li hesitated a little. He and his sister Bai Li Zhen looked at each other. "If you don't participate in the second round of the trial, you will be forcefully transported out within 5 days. Fan Xiaoming gritted his teeth and stepped forward. There is no other choice. Hong Bai saw that even Fan Xiaoming, this timid opponent, had gone up to press his palm and hurriedly walked over, unwilling to be left behind. The two of them pressed their palms one after the other, then their bodies were enveloped by a white light and they were immediately transported out. Arbor watched them leave one by one and exchanged glances with Xiaomi. She walked over to her side and stuffed a fire talisman into her hand. "Don't force yourself." Xiaomi nodded and was transported out in the next second. Arbor saw that the surroundings were empty and everyone had left. She took out a meat bun from her inner world and took a bite. She turned her head and saw the giant ape baring its teeth at her and putting on an exasperated expression. Arbor hurriedly looked down at herself. What's wrong? What's wrong? She had already advanced a level. Compared to most of the people here, she was already hard-working enough, all right. Why was he still looking at her with that expression? Suddenly, the giant ape grabbed her small hand and pressed it directly on the stone tablet. Arbor widened her eyes. The next second, she felt her body lighten and she was also transported out. The most despicable thing was that the ape even snatched the meat bun that she had only taken a small bite out of. The bone-chilling cold water enveloped Arbor, causing her to tremble slightly. Then, just like when she came, a warm current flowed out from her chest and flowed around her body, causing her to unconsciously stretch out her arms and legs and paddle in the pool. This feeling of being surrounded by water and being completely enveloped by the power of water was really not bad. This cold pool was the one connected to the entrance. It was just that the water here was colder than the one at the entrance. However, this was not a big deal. Arbor swam around in this pool as if she was having fun. When she focused her gaze, she saw that not far away, the Ing brothers had covered themselves in a defensive barrier and were shivering in the water, their faces ashen. These two people looked rather pitiful. Qiao Mu swam over cheerfully while swinging her little legs. She then circled around the duo's defensive barrier twice. Ing Jian was standing inside the defensive barrier. Through the transparent barrier, he was trembling with fear as he looked at the little girl who was circling around them. "What are you trying to do?" Ing Jian's eyes were about to fall out of their sockets. Arbor swam around 3 times and stopped in front of them. She muttered to herself, "I wonder how powerful my Vajra little jade hands will be in the cold pool water?" With that, the jade in her hand flashed and the Vajra talisman activated. Arbor's small hand was like a steel claw, directly grabbing at the defensive barrier in front of Ing Jian. But the first claw was blocked by the defensive barrier. Chapter 1087. Arbor's eyes lit up. Unwilling to give up, it stretched out its claws again. A second claw, a third claw. Upon seeing this, the third prince, Ing Fa, had already quietly retreated into the depths of the water. Although the water pressure in the deep waters increased and the amount of profound energy required to maintain the defensive barrier would definitely be greater, the most important thing right now was to leave this little devil's claws. Stop joking around. Did this little devil think that this defensive barrier was indestructible? That would consume a lot of profound energy. Not only did it have to withstand the water pressure, but it also had to withstand the little devil's attacks. The loss of profound energy would definitely be faster. They still had to persevere in this godforsaken place for 7 days. Ing Fa secretly complained in his heart. He felt that he might not even be able to persevere for a single day. But now that he had been sent out, it had not even been 15 days. He did not even get the consolation prize, the Star Jade Pill. Wasn't this trip to the mystic realm a joke? If word got out, he would definitely be laughed at. Especially if his brothers from the opposing forces were to find out about this, they would definitely exaggerate about him and show him how incompetent he was. Arbor naturally knew that Ing Fa had sneaked away. But now that Ing Jian was in front of him, it did not matter whether Ing Fa was present or not. With both old and new grudges added together, Arbor planned to settle things with this Ing Jian. Seeing this person standing inside the defensive barrier with such a ridiculous expression, it was as if he had eaten a mouthful of feces. Chi on the third claw, a small crack appeared on Ing Jian's defensive barrier. When Arbor saw this, he immediately became spirited. This Vajra talisman could still break other people's defensive barriers, but it was a pity that he had clawed it too many times. On the 8th claw, the defensive barrier on Ing Jian's body suddenly cracked. His entire person also fell out of the defensive barrier in a sorry state, miserably falling into the water. Immediately, he gulped down a large mouthful of ice water. Arbor was satisfied. Stretching out his leg, he used all his strength to kick the cold pond water. After swimming one round around Ing Jian's sprawled body, he waved his hand at him and turned his head to leave. Fuck. Ing Jian's current state of mind was absolutely dumbfounded to the extreme. This little devil, after messing around for a while and breaking his defensive barrier, he left in such an infuriating manner. In a fit of anger, Ing Jian kicked the water to chase after Qiao Mu, but to his surprise, the icy water in this glacial pond was very strange. After his entire body was enveloped by the icy water, he felt like he was in an ice cellar in the underworld. His entire body felt heavy from head to toe, and it felt like a boulder was pressing down on his chest, making it difficult for him to breathe. Arbor saw the crown prince of the Eastern Ing Kingdom angrily shout in the water and was forced to gulp down a large mouthful of ice water. His big eyes couldn't help but brighten. He waved his small hand at him in annoyance and then went to find his second target. That's right, he was looking for trouble with the demonic saintess. It was rare for her to be like a fish in water. Others were in such a miserable state. If she didn't take this opportunity to hit them while they were down, how could she live up to the nicknames of Little Fiend and Little Devil that others had given her? Arbor grinned and swam around the pool, but he didn't see any trace of the saintess. She clearly saw Sikong Fuling being transported in with her own eyes. Why was there no trace of her now? Could it be that this fellow also used an invisibility talisman? Arbor's mind stirred, and he opened his spiritual eye to look around. Not long after, he indeed found Sikong Fuling's figure in a corner at the bottom of the pool. She really knew how to hide. Chapter 1088. Arbor's figure, which was about to swim over, suddenly paused. Not far away, he saw Sikong Fuling squatting inside the defensive barrier and gingerly picking up grains of fine sand-like sparkling objects at the bottom of the water. There were still many of these sparkling objects in the corner she was in. Sikong Fuling picked them up very cautiously. Her entire body was curled up inside the defensive barrier, with only 2 fingers sticking out to pick up those sparkling grains of sand one by one. Could this be a forging material called frigid star sand? Arbor felt that he should have guessed the truth, so he quietly swam over and also cast an invisibility talisman on himself. He just openly stared at Sikong Fuling, who was energetically picking up grains of sand one by one. After she finished picking up all the glacial star sand in the surrounding area, Arbor immediately moved. In the water she could congeal all kinds of water forms at will. Thus, when Sikong Fuling saw in astonishment that a pair of giant hands formed from water suddenly appeared in front of her and directly slapped her defensive barrier, she was unable to resist at all. She only felt a terrifying force rush toward her chest and spit out a mouthful of blood with a pft sound. The entire defensive barrier was instantly torn apart. The small bag of glacial star sand that she had just collected in her hand all fell into that giant hand formed from water. "Who is it?" Sikong Fuling screeched furiously. "Hiding your head and shrinking your tail. Shameless." Arbor directly summoned the giant hand of water back to his side and took the small bag of glacial star sand in the palm of its hand. Opening it, he saw that there were as many as 50 to 60 grains of glacial star sand. He was instantly overjoyed. She didn't know how to forge weapons, but she couldn't resist people who liked to prattle in her ear when they had nothing better to do. Something like, "If there are any such materials, I can help you continue to improve the ferrule. I guarantee that you'll be even more adept at it." Arbor happily put the glacial star sand that Sikong Fuling had painstakingly collected into his inner world. Afterward, his figure appeared in front of Sikong Fuling in an ostentatious manner. By this time, Sikong Fuling had already torn off that invisibility talisman on her body. She was so angry that her eyes and mouth were practically crooked and her entire body was trembling. One had to know that when she discovered that there was a rare divine-level forging material, the frigid star sand, she was overjoyed. In order to prevent others from spying on such a treasure, she even secretly stuck an invisibility talisman on herself, intending to quietly collect it. With these 50 to 60 grains of glacial star sand in his hands, this trip was not in vain. It should be known that frigid star sand might not be of much use in their lower star fields, but in the middle 6 prefectures, a single grain of frigid star sand could be auctioned off at an astronomical price. After all, in a lower star domain like Sikong Planet, mystic weapon masters had already become legendary figures. Those ordinary weapon masters who only knew how to forge ordinary weapons would have no use for this kind of god-grade forging material even if they were given it. Sikong Fuling was really about to explode from anger at this moment. She had never seen such a vile, wretched girl. She had obviously snatched someone else's things and still looked at you with an innocent expression. This face was really infuriating. If she hadn't known that Sir Cult Master valued this darn girl in front of her, she would have thought of a way to get rid of this wretched girl long ago when they first met. This would also prevent her from being so angry that she would ascend to heaven and leave her body. Return the frigid star sand. Sikong Fuling took a deep breath. "It's useless to you even if you want it." Arbor blinked and shook his head very resolutely. Chapter 1089. Not giving. Sikong Fuling was about to explode from anger. How could there be such a vile brat in this world? Was it reasonable for her to rob on the spot? Don't show up if you don't give. She would have admitted that her skills were inferior, right? Yet you still had to show up and look at her innocently. Sikong Fuling really wanted to rush up and slap this little imp to death. Lord Cult Master was crazy enough to think highly of such a vile character. How much of a masochist was he to ask for a beating? No wonder she got stabbed in the chest. She was asking for it. Sikong Fuling bit her small lips and took a deep breath, secretly suppressing the anger that filled her belly. "Miss Chiao, you're not an armament master, so this glacial star sand is of no use to you. I think you don't even know what the glacial star sand is used for." Arbor blinked. "It's used to create divine artifacts. Without adding this, even a top-grade spirit artifact can't transform into a divine artifact." Sikong Fuling looked at her in surprise. "Alright, even if you know what it's used for, you're not an armament master at all, right? It's a waste for this thing to fall into your hands. How about this, I'll buy it from you." When Sikong Fuling said the last 5 words, she felt so aggrieved that she wanted to die. How did she, a dignified saint of the demonic cult, end up in this state? Arbor stretched out a pair of slender white hands and flipped it back and forth in the water. She asked curiously, "What do you have to offer?" "Spirit stones." Sikong Fuling gnashed her teeth. "You've heard of spirit stones, right? The basic resources for spiritual realm cultivation are the same as our magnetite." "Of course I know." Arbor interrupted her with a "don't treat this baby like a fool" expression. She then asked, "How many spirit stones can you give?" 100 pieces. Middle-grade spirit stones. She gritted her teeth and gave a blood-vomiting price. "Deal." Arbor nodded without hesitation and poked Sikong Fuling with his little hand. "Hand it over." Sikong Fuling was stunned on the spot for quite a while before she took out a pouch of mid-grade spirit stones from her inner world with great joy and tossed it to Qiao Mu. I'm not lying to you. This pouch of mid-grade spirit stones is good stuff that can support you for a period of time even if you travel to the middle 6 prefectures. Arbor nodded and then took out a brocade pouch embroidered with black datura flowers from his inner world. Upon seeing this, Sikong Fuling gnashed her teeth in anger. This damned fellow, even the brocade pouch was taken away by her. So shameless. However, seeing that she was able to return the glacial star sand brocade pouch to her, Sikong Fuling's complexion also became a little better. At least she was tactful. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to leave the frigid pool's range with this bag of frigid star sand. Arbor opened the brocade pouch and looked through it for a long time, causing Sikong Fuling's brows to jump as a bad premonition suddenly slid past her heart. Here for you. The little fellow picked out the tiniest grain of glacial star sand. With a slight wave of his little hand, he wrapped this grain of glacial star sand in a stream of water and threw it in front of the Holy Maiden. The Holy Maiden was stunned for a long time without any reaction. Then the entire frigid pool was stirred up like boiling water and exploded with a boom. The demonic cult Holy Maiden let out a flustered and exasperated wail. I said 100 mid-grade spirit stones for a bag of glacial star sand. This fellow was really shameless. He actually had the nerve to pick out the tiniest grain of glacial star sand from the pouch for her. I'm going to kill you. Chapter 1090. Why didn't she ascend to the heavens? 100 mid-grade spirit stones actually gave her a speck of glacial star sand that was comparable to a speck of dust. She really didn't want to pay for infuriating people to death, right? Sikong Fuling was so angry that her chest heaved up and down as she panted heavily within the defensive barrier. She abruptly struck her palm into the water, and a huge wave crashed toward Arbor. Arbor escaped more nimbly than a fish. Kicking her 2 small feet in the water, she turned around and swam toward the surface of the glacial pond. How could Sikong Fuling allow her to escape after taking the benefits? With a furious roar, she unleashed her greatest underwater potential. Kicking her legs, she injected mystic energy into the defensive barrier while vigorously paddling in the water, chasing after Arbor with a face full of resentment. The other people in the glacial pond had long sensed this unusual movement. Ingfei's first suspect was that fellow Arbor. But hearing the fierce roar, it seemed to be that saint of the demonic cult, Her Excellency Sikong Fuling. Could it be that this Prince Mo consort bullied Sikong Fuling again? Heavens! Just how vile was this person's temperament? Never mind that she bullied their eldest crown prince, but now she even dared to shit on Sikong Fuling's head. She was truly reckless. When Sikong Fuling fought with her just now, she lost by half a notch. Did that crown princess think that Sikong Fuling's cultivation was inferior to hers? She was the saint of the demonic cult and had countless trump cards in her hands. She definitely hadn't used her full strength yet. They should let that Prince Mo consort try kicking an iron plate so that she wouldn't always look at them with disdain and find trouble with them all the time. A huge wave rushed toward Arbor's back. As if she had a pair of eyes on the back of her head, when the huge wave was less than an inch away from her head, a huge palm formed from water directly slapped down that sky-high wave. Arbor kicked the water and swam freely while turning her head to glance at that fellow Sikong Fuling from time to time. Seeing that she was a little far away from her, she stopped and waited for her on the spot. Seeing that she was chasing after her, she hurriedly kicked her little legs and swam a few more times. After several times, Sikong Fuling was exhausted and battered. Her beautiful eyes glared angrily at the little imp in front of her through the heavy mist. If she could grab that brat's head right now, she would definitely press him to death. This damned brat was truly infuriating, but she couldn't do anything to him. This was what made Sikong Fuling most depressed. Suddenly, a huge black shadow appeared in the mist. Its bell-like eyes stared straight at him. If not for Sikong Fuling's audacity, she would have been frightened to death by it. The giant ape stretched out its drenched arm and picked up Qiao Mu, who was causing trouble everywhere. It was as if it was glaring at a disobedient child, and the anger in its eyes was too tangible for its own good. The giant ape's thoughts right now were probably, I told you to train properly in the water, but you're messing around everywhere and having so much fun. Was this appropriate? Arbor pursed his little mouth and protested, I've already discussed with you that you're not allowed to carry me around in the future? The giant ape carried the little fellow away from Sikong Fuling and the others and tossed her into a corner at the bottom of the water. Then it sat down in front of him like a freaking mountain and blocked the space around her. That's enough. Chapter 1091. Xiao Mu grumpily rolled her eyes at it. She poked its furry body with her little finger, but the giant ape didn't budge an inch. Arbor was somewhat helpless. Looking at the situation, the giant ape wanted to imprison her in this small place and let her cultivate properly for a few days. This fellow was truly conscientious in its duty, sparing no effort to urge her to work hard. Fine, let's cultivate then. Arbor waved her hand and opened the defensive mystic artifact. She sat inside the defensive barrier and began her 7-day cultivation journey. Opening the defensive barrier was because she wanted to set up a mystic guiding talisman formation around her small body. The mystic guiding talisman formation was drawn by her talisman paper, so it probably wouldn't be effective if wet. If she could draw jade talismans in the future, she wouldn't need to open the defensive barrier even in the water. The little fellow calmed down. The entire cold pond also quieted down. The most miserable one was Jian. After his defensive barrier was broken, he couldn't hold on for more than an hour in the bone-chilling cold pond water. At this time he was lying on the ground beside the cold pond with a sorrowful cry, looking up at the dark blue sky in the mystic realm. It was as if his entire body was filled with lead. His body and even his spirit were abnormally heavy. So hateful that a white light suddenly covered his body, and Jian's heart instantly chilled. Not long after he felt a strong force pulling at him, trying to transport him out of this mystic realm. No. No. Jian's duck-like voice let out an unpleasant shriek. He flipped over and desperately clung onto a huge rock beside the cold pond. His 10 fingers dug into the sand and water plants under the huge rock as he screamed, "No! I'm not going out. I haven't gotten any benefits yet. I can't go out." That ferocious power was irresistible. No matter how Jian screamed and cried in despair, in the blink of an eye, Jian, together with the rock, smashed into the wet, muddy ground full of dried grass and broken branches with a thud. The hard rock made his chest hurt, but he simply didn't have time to think about it and jumped up from the rock. He cut a sorry figure and was completely exhausted. Jian glanced back and immediately discovered that he had once again returned to the mystic beast forest. Ah! Jian roared at the sky. Damn it, he was really teleported out by the mystic realm. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Jian ran madly through the mystic beast forest, intending to find the cold pond at the entrance to the secret realm. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he searched, there was still no trace of the cold pool. Jian immediately sat down on the ground like a deflated ball. His heart was filled with a mixture of regret, disappointment, grief, and indignation. He hung his head dejectedly. Suddenly, a tiny mouse with a sharp mouth came out of the bushes and squeaked at him. This mouse was not even as big as one of his palms. The hair on its head was sparse, and a pair of small red eyes were staring at him. Jian's heart was so stifled and uncomfortable that he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to it. He directly kicked the mouse, causing it to somersault and squeak before it retreated back into the bushes in fright. Jian hung his head and sighed for a while. He glanced at the rock from the corner of his eyes and suddenly stood up, excitedly pouncing to the side of the huge rock. This was the rock he carried out of the mystic realm. He didn't know if there was anything special about it. Chapter 1092. Jian's entire body was sprawled on top of the rock, constantly rubbing against the huge rock, turning it over and over to examine it. Soon after, he was disappointed to find that it was just an ordinary rock. Because it had been washed by the cold pond water for many years, it seemed to be emitting traces of cold air, and was much darker than the usual rocks. Jian let out a long sigh, then lay down under a huge, crooked old tree. Raising his head, he looked at the dense mass of old tree branches that covered his line of sight. Layers upon layers of luxuriant branches and leaves blocked out the sunlight above, not even a trace of light could pass through. He held a signal device in his hand and released it to inform his subordinates to come and receive him. Soon after, a wave of physical and mental exhaustion overwhelmed him and unknowingly, he fell asleep under the old tree. Not long after Jian fell asleep, a sparsely haired sharp-mouthed rat suddenly drilled out from behind the grass nest, its little red eyes glancing at Jian. Squeak squeak. Behind the grass nest, hundreds and thousands of sharp-mouthed little rats swarmed out, excitedly surrounding Jian. Jian was awakened by the pain of his skin being bitten, and as soon as he opened his eyes, he felt pain in his eyelids, as if his entire eye socket was bitten by something, startling him into screaming loudly. Squeak squeak squeak. The group of rats rejoiced, and at this time, there were close to 10,000 rats crazily surrounding Jian. Jin's eyes were dark and he fiercely chopped out 2 palms of profound energy, but how could it be so easy to disperse a group of over 10,000 rats? After hitting a few dozen, the remaining thousands and tens of thousands of rats swarmed over, covering the sky and covering the earth, giving him almost no time to breathe. In a split second, his entire body was submerged in the shape of the Chinese character. If one looked down from a high altitude, they would be able to see that Jin's body was completely covered by the dense group of rats, and in the blink of an eye, his 4 white and chubby arms and legs were gnawed until only 4 bones were left. Very quickly, Jin's screams were drowned out by this group of rats. After about half an hour, when Jin's subordinates found their master's location using the signal device, other than a thick layer of withered branches and leaves, they didn't see anything else. The few of them exchanged a strange look and automatically spread out to search the surrounding area. My Chiao section break. 3 days later, Fa, Fan Xiaoming, and Hong Baoyi were also forcefully teleported out of the secret realm. Survival of the fittest, and the winner was king. Arbor didn't know that something big had happened in the outside world. It had even alerted the hidden forces of the 6 prefectures. Royal City East Palace Sleeping Chamber. Emolian stood up as usual. When she raised her hand, she silently looked down at her slightly stiff left index finger and frowned. The hand that had been poisoned by Ding Ting Ding was gradually losing feeling? He had taken a lot of antidote pills in the past few days. He had also used the medicinal power to treat himself, but it didn't seem to be very effective. However, Ding Ting Ding's idea of poisoning him to death within a few days was still a bit too naive. Emolian's eyes flickered slightly. She wrapped her left hand with a rich medicinal power. After a few minutes of treatment, the stiff symptoms improved. However, he also knew that the stiffness would increase the next day. It was as if the medicine could only alleviate the pain but not cure the poison completely. Not long after she got up, Huifeng's voice quietly sounded from the window. "Your Highness." Huifeng had been by her side for many years, so Emolian was already familiar with his personality. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.